Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Well, it's morning/afternoon if you're in the U.S. and different times in other parts around the world. Thanks for joining us. We are here to bring you live coverage of the White House press briefing and bonus coverage of the Pentagon and State Department briefing, because they're all one right after the other. White House press briefing in 50 minutes. And then the Pentagon one is supposed to be at 2, I believe, and State Department at 2:30. So we'll get some bonus coverage of those. How about that? We're going to be checking those out, taking your comments and questions on the air, giving you news updates. And I appreciate you guys joining the stream. Let me double check that time. That's the one. Oh, you know what? It looks like the Pentagon's going to be at 2:45. Oh, not 2:30. When's the State Department? Is that 2? My time might have been off in the description. Press briefings, Department of State. Let's see. I'm looking at the schedule here. Anyways, that's my plan. Public schedule, March 17th. 2. Okay, so it's 2 p.m. for State Department and then 2:45 for Pentagon. What did I have it in the description as? Okay. So I'm looking at the schedule. It's Department of State. I'm just changing it in the description because I don't like it having be wrong. Well, one of the descriptions. Okay. So, White House press briefing at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The State Department press briefing is supposed to be 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the Pentagon briefing is supposed to be 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So we can check out the briefings and talk about new stuff in between. Okay? By the way, thanks to the Ringa X. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick Robinson, for being a member. And also, thanks to all of our moderators who are here. We have Beth Mythical, Carms, Ruth Krafasi, Janet B., Beezy over there on YouTube, Sabrina. Thank you, everybody. Also, we have on X, Linda Belk, Misha, and Larry. Thank you. On Twitch, Good Luck Duck, Idaho Star, I Got That Fire. Matthew Kohai 3, Certainly Dev. Thanks for moderating over on Twitch. And also, just getting everything set up here. We have, thanks to our Facebook moderators, Margaret Riley and Kay Lowry Body over on Facebook. Thanks, Tony Neem, for watching from Pennsylvania. All right. We're ready here. Oh, there's one other thing I want to do real quick. I just want to test something. Quick audio test. You're going to hear 2 of me for a second, I think. Give me a second. Can you hear 2 of me now? I hope. Hold on. Right now? Well, you're not going to hear it yet. Now? Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's try it now. Now, testing 1, 2, 3. Let's try it now. Now, yes, you are 1, 2, 3. Wonderful. That's what I wanted to. Okay, good. We're all good to go. We're good to go. Now you can hear 2 of me, just for a second. All right. Okay. So, press briefing coming up. Before the briefings, I like talking about some things that the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt will be asked about. So my guess is that this one's going to be a big one. Hold on a second here. If you hang on a second. This has been getting a bunch of attention. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this story here. Trump administration deports hundreds of immigrants even as a judge orders their removals be stopped. By the way, thank you to our member, Janine B. Thanks, Janine B. I appreciate that. Thank you. What is this? Well, I don't think I'm going to have, I don't know. We might have video of Trump in the afternoon too, possibly from the Kennedy Center. We'll have to see how that goes. The Trump administration transferred hundreds of immigrants to El Salvador, and they used an 18th century law to justify doing this without hearings. A law that they can basically says you can, if we're in a war with if the U.S. is in a war with another country, you can deport their citizens without the normal procedures. And a judge had ordered them to stop deporting these people. And the planes were reportedly in the air. Some planes were in the air with people on them. The judge said, turn around the planes. And the administration didn't do that. That's what the reporting is saying. Now there's this question of the administration says it didn't do anything wrong. So you're going to be hearing some questions about this today. So we might as well talk about it. Because I think you're going to hear a bunch of questions about this. This could be the top thing asked about, although I don't know. The caption of this photo is, in this photo provided by El Salvador's presidential press office, prison guards transfer deportees from the U.S. alleged to be Venezuelan gang members to the terrorism confinement center in Tecoluca, El Salvador. You know what? Give me a second. I want to take some of your comments. We're going to talk about this. Hold on a second here. Okay, so here's a little summary, and we'll take some comments from you guys. Trump administration deports hundreds of immigrants even as a judge orders their removals be stopped. This is an AP story. It's been widely reported. The Trump administration has transferred hundreds of immigrants to El Salvador even as a federal judge issued an order temporarily barring the deportations, which were justified by the administration by appealing to an 18th century wartime declaration targeting these were deportations were targeting Venezuelan gang members. Flights were in the air at the time of the ruling. U.S. District Judge James E. Boasberg issued an order on Saturday temporarily blocking the deportations. but lawyers told him there were already 2 planes with immigrants in the air, one headed for El Salvador, the other for Honduras. Boasberg verbally ordered the planes to be turned around, but they apparently were not turned around, and he did not include the directive in his written order. Let me show you what the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, who you're going to be hearing from in a little bit, has said in response to this. She said today, she says the administration did not, quote, refuse to comply with a court order. She says the order, which she claims has no lawful basis, the White House claims has no lawful basis, was issued after terrorist TDA aliens, she means aliens in this Venezuelan gang, the White House claims, had already been removed from U.S. territory. The written order and the administration's actions do not conflict. She mentions the written order. The judge had also given a verbal order saying to turn the planes around. My understanding is that that would usually be a verbal order by a judge in that situation would normally be taken as having legal force, but we can talk about that more. That's my understanding, but I'm not a legal expert, so. Moreover, she said, as the Supreme Court has repeatedly made clear, federal courts generally have no jurisdiction over the president's conduct of foreign affairs, his authorities under the Alien Enemies Act, and his core Article 2 powers to remove foreign alien terrorists from U.S. soil and repel a declared invasion. A single judge in a single city cannot direct the movements of an aircraft carrying foreign alien terrorists who were physically expelled from U.S. soil. So that is what that's what the White House is claiming. Again, the issue is that they were not, the administration used this 18th century law to justify taking these people and removing them from the country without the normal procedures they would go through, like a hearing and any kind of appeal process and anything like that. Just taking them and without just summarily throwing them out of the country and evicting them. The gang is the Tren de Aragua gang, which Trump targeted in his unusual proclamation that was released Saturday. In a court filing, the Department of Justice said it would not use the Trump proclamation he blocked for further deportations if his decision is not overturned. Trump sidestepped a question over whether his administration violated a court order while speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday evening. I don't know. You have to speak to the lawyers about that, Trump said, although he defended the deportations. I can tell you this, these were bad people. Asked about invoking presidential powers used in times of war, Trump said, "This is a time of war," describing the influx of criminal migrants as an invasion. Trump's allies were gleeful over the results. The president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, who agreed to house about 300 immigrants for a year at a cost of $6 million in his country's prisons, wrote on social media site X, above an article about the ruling, "Oopsie, too late." That post was recirculated by the White House communications director. Steve Lookner, a professor at the Georgetown University Law Center, said the judge's verbal order to turn around the planes was not technically part of his final order, but that the Trump administration clearly violated the spirit of it. This just incentivizes future courts to be hyper-specific in their orders and not give the government any wiggle room, Vladek said. The immigrants were deported I'm going to just read a little more here, and then I'm going to take some comments from you guys. The immigrants were deported after Trump's declaration of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which has been used only 3 times in U.S. history. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798, invoked during the War of 1812 and World Wars I and II, requires a president to declare the U.S. is at war, giving him extraordinary powers to detain and remove foreigners who otherwise would have protections under immigration or criminal laws. It was last used to justify the detention of Japanese American civilians during World War II. The Trump administration has not identified the immigrants deported, has not provided any evidence they are in fact members of Tren de Aragua gang, or evidence that they have committed crimes in the United States. Video released by El Salvador's government Sunday showed men exiting airplanes onto an airport tarmac lined by officers in riot gear. The men, who had their hands and ankles shackled, struggled to walk as officers pushed their heads down to have them bend down at the waist. The immigrants were taken to the notorious CSOT facility, the centerpiece of Salvadorian President Bukele's push to pacify his once violence-racked country through tough police measures and limits on basic rights. All right, I want to take some of your comments on the air. Oh, the litigation that led to the hold on deportations ordered by the judge was filed on behalf of 5 Venezuelans held in Texas, who their lawyers said were concerned they'd be falsely accused of being members of the gang. Once the act is invoked, they warned, Trump could simply declare anyone a Tren de Aragua gang member and remove them from the country with no other procedures. And let me also show you what President Trump had said about this in his initial proclamation. Hold on a second here. This was 2 days ago. I want to find you the Trump comments. Where is, I think maybe it's on the White House site. Here it is. I got it. Invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the U.S. by Tren de Aragua. So this is this proclamation. I'm not going to read the whole thing. As President of the U.S. and Commander-in-Chief, it is my solemn duty to protect the American people from the devastating effects of this invasion. So he issued a proclamation on Saturday declaring this gang is perpetrating, attempting, and threatening an invasion or predatory incursion against the territory of the U.S. Pursuant to the Alien Enemies Act. So he appeals to the Alien Enemies Act. All right. Let me take some comments from you guys. I'm sorry. I was trying to just give you some background on this whole thing. Here's another photo. In this photo, provided by El Salvador's presidential press office, a prison guard transfers deportees from the U.S. alleged to be Venezuelan gang members to the terrorism confinement center in Toluca, El Salvador on Sunday. So I'm sure this is going to be asked about. Jay Hitchcock, our viewer, says, mark my words, will be under martial law by summer. Genesis Mechanical wants to impeach judges that keep blocking Trump. Our viewer O.C. Neal thinks President Trump is loosely defining invasion. Grace NYC believes Trump follows the rule of law. Gubby Records, our viewer, thinks this will be overturned in court. We are not at war. Only Congress can declare war. PHL Knife and Tool says, please define invasion. Oh, let me give you a little more background here. Hold on a second here. The Alien Enemies Act. What to know about a 1798 law that Trump has invoked for deportations. And just to be clear here, the concern on the part of those, well, a big concern on the part of those concerned by this is that, for example, someone could be falsely accused of being a Venezuelan gang member in this gang when they are not. And then when the government is invoking this act, that person could just be taken into custody and immediately put on a plane and deported and put in an El Salvadoran prison without any sort of hearing or any sort of chance to make their case or any sort of chance to hear the government's evidence against them. That's one of the big concerns. AP says the U.S. deported hundreds of immigrants after President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act for the first time since World War II, using the sweeping powers of a centuries-old wartime law to target alleged members of a Venezuelan gang. The deportations over the weekend came as a federal judge issued an order temporarily barring them. And again, the judge said that these planes that were in the air with these alleged gang members should be turned around. He gave a verbal order, but the planes were not turned around. This law allows non-citizens to be deported without the opportunity to go before an immigration or federal court judge. Trump's Saturday proclamation called the Tren de Aragua gang an invading force. The administration has not identified who was deported, provided any evidence they are gang members, or that they committed any crimes in the United States. The gang, Tren de Aragua, originated in Venezuela, but the deportees were sent to El Salvador after the Trump administration agreed to pay $6 million for 300 alleged members to be imprisoned there for a year. Venezuela typically does not agree to accept its citizens deported by the U.S. A U.S. judge who's appointed by President Obama, issued an order temporarily blocking the deportations, but lawyers said 2 planes with immigrants were already in the air. Boasberg then verbally ordered the planes be turned around, but the flights continue. The law was passed in 1798 with the U.S. preparing for what it believed would be a war with France, the Alien Enemies Act. Congress passed a series of laws that increase the federal government's reach. The Alien Enemies Act was created to give the president wide powers to imprison and deport non-citizens in time of war. Since then, the act has been used just 3 times during the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. And in this section, AP says, the U.S. isn't at war, is it? For years, Trump and his allies have argued that the U.S. is facing an, quote, invasion of people arriving in the country illegally. Administration officials use military terminology to describe the situation. In his proclamation, Trump said the gang is perpetrating, attempting, and threatening an invasion or predatory incursion against U.S. territory. On Air Force One, he said this is a time of war. Critics say Trump is wrongly using the act. The Brennan Center for Justice said the Alien Enemies Act may only be used during declared wars or armed attacks on the U.S. by foreign governments. The president has falsely proclaimed an invasion and predatory incursion to use a law written for wartime for peacetime immigration enforcement. Anyways, so I'm going to take a few more comments on this topic, but I have to imagine this will be a big topic. NY committee thinks the U.S. is at much as war as we were in 1798. Slavic, Akkadian, Latino dwarf says they could be political prisoners. Nobody knows their identities. Craig C. says predatory incursion is exactly what the gang is. K says first it's them, then it will be your neighbors, then, granted you're not a Christian white nationalist, they will come from you. Come for you. That's what our viewer K said. Hope, is it Hun? I'm sorry, Hope, if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Says, very effective reenactment of the law needs to be utilized and enforced. Our viewer Shift Line says, doesn't feel like a war. We have 22 minutes till this press conference if it starts on time. Let me go over the what we're doing here today. Oh, by the way, quick thanks to Bebop and Rocksteady for your support. Who thinks a verbal order is not enough? Judge should have known Trump would disobey. Thanks Pixel Panda, who says, as a German, this does sound familiar. Thanks for your support, The Old Witch, who says the last time Congress formally declared war was 1942. Hang on a moment here. I think you might be right. That's what I'm seeing online. Thanks to Tim Glenn for your support. Tim Glenn thinks an American will not fall into the cracks of false allegations these self-righteous people are afraid of. Only foreigners could. So what? So Tim does not have a problem, say, if someone is falsely picked up and deported under this provision if they are not an American. Thank you, Tim Glenn, for your support. Tim says the invaders and criminals who don't follow the law, they can get out. Thank you, Janine B, for being a member. So what we're doing is in 20 minutes, we are going to cover the White House press briefing. And then after that, there's going to be, we're going to discuss it, but there's pretty soon after that, there's supposed to be the State Department briefing and the Pentagon briefing. So we're going to show you some of those. That's the plan. Because we might as well. By the way, at some point soon, I should get some video from the briefing room. So let me just check here. I don't think it's posted yet. No. I think in a few minutes I'll get a little early video from the briefing room. But it's not up there yet. As soon as I have it, I'll throw it up there. Oh, thanks also so much to Another Drummer. Thank you. Another Drummer, Texas. Thanks for your support. Another Drummer, Texas. We got to talk about a different topic, by the way. There's a bunch of topics that are going to be asked about. I mean, the Houthis, that's going to be asked about. The Houthis. We covered this a couple days ago. President Trump announced decisive military action against the Houthis in Yemen. And the U.S. has conducted several rounds, I believe. There have been reports the last couple days at different times, various reports at different times of various U.S. strikes in Yemen. The U.S. itself has said that they've done it at different times. Some of those reports from the U.S. government. So that's going on. And I don't know if you saw this. What President Trump posted about this a little while ago. Here is President Trump's post, his truth, they call it, on Truth Social, from about an hour ago. This is what President Trump posted around an hour ago. Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen, who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that that force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they've lost control, but they haven't lost control. Iran is dictating every move, giving them the weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. So he's saying any kind of response, further attacks on shipping by the Houthis, further incidents where the Houthis say fire missiles or drones at American ships, which has happened before. Reportedly, it happened a day or two ago. He says those are going to be treated like attacks by Iran. Yeah, a couple days ago, Lucas Tomlinson from Fox News had reported that a couple days ago, when was it? Was it yesterday? Yesterday, Lucas Tomlinson of Fox News reported that a U.S. official said that U.S. warships shot down about a dozen Houthi drones targeting the Truman Aircraft Carrier Strike Group after the U.S. launched airstrikes against the Houthis, and that the drones were shot down well before they posed a serious threat. I mean, that's a report from Fox News' Lucas Tomlinson from yesterday. So I got to think this is going to be asked about. Sylvia S. says, something needs to be done. Every ship forced to avoid Houthis going around Africa is 1 million extra cost shipping. A lot of ships have been made to take a longer route because they don't want to go in the Red Sea. We were talking about this, how this has raised shipping costs. We were talking about this a couple days ago when we covered this. Half Jack says, this is one thing I do agree with him on. This affects everyone, not just us and Islamic extremists. Islamic extremists only understand extreme violence. Rocket UFO says, sounds like war again. Mitchell Pilot says he needs to not bluff on these threats. He's threatened Hamas like 4 times now. I mean, I remember from his first administration some very threatening messages. Well, I should say I think I remember some very threatening messages against Iran. I think I remember. I remember doing coverage of one of them. This was years ago. Robin Foose says, OMG, he's going to start World War III. By the way, thank you to FKU Bigness for your support, who says, I believe a significant proportion of our population is fully on board with this totalitarian regime change via Trump. Sad times. Thank you, Two Sisters Junk Journals, for your support, who says, how do we keep a president from becoming a dictator? What happened to checks and balances? I really need to keep my Social Security or I'm homeless. By the way, I think the last two comments were referring maybe more to our previous story we talked about, the story about the Trump administration deporting hundreds of immigrants this weekend, and critics of the Trump administration saying they violated this court order of a judge who told the Trump administration to turn planes around, and they did not. But we just talked about that, and they'll be asking about it during the press briefing. Thank you, Tim Glenn, for your support. Tim thinks the probability someone is falsely accused of being a member of that Venezuelan gang is not more significant than the reality of foreign gang activity worth it to deport. And remember, the question is not just deporting, but deporting without any kind of hearing or procedure. Thanks to Ringa X, who says, the marine traffic, please, when you get a chance. Do you mean, so the Ringa X, are you, I'm not aware of anything. I haven't heard about any kind of big developments that would be visible on marine traffic. I don't believe that U.S. ships, I don't believe U.S. warships are live trackable. That's my guess. I have a strong suspicion that if I went to marinetraffic.com, which is a really cool site, that I couldn't see the real-time locations of U.S. warships, if that's what you're asking about. If you're asking about something else, let me know. But I don't think we're going to see much there. Hang on a second here. Marnie says you shouldn't be able to see them. But if there's something on marine traffic that's going on, I mean, I follow people who I think they will post if something huge is going on there. That is not unexpected. I wouldn't even know where to look. I wouldn't even know where to look for the ships. Thank you, the ringer, though. Just for the heck of it, I just went to marine traffic and searched by name for the USS Truman aircraft carrier. It did not come up. Is this it? Oh, hold on. I found it on marine traffic, but it says vessel is out of range. Vessel is out of range. Position received 19 days ago. That's what it says on marine traffic about the USS Truman. I'm just looking at it right now. If I have the right page, I believe I do, because I looked it up. It says vessel is out of range. Position received 19 days ago. Hey, thanks to Aleph Tav for your support. Someone explained to me why an illegal should have a hearing upon being deported. Gang or not gang member, doesn't matter either way. Well, I think the basic idea is two things. First of all, people in the U.S. are given constitutional rights to due process. So that would be one argument, is that the Constitution mandates it. Another argument would be like that's part of what that in America, and that's why it's in the Constitution. It's thought that it's important to give people due process, so so you have the right to defend yourself from, say, a false accusation. Now, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I think you're asking about the due process protections applying to non-citizens. Let's see here. Yes, so I believe that the Supreme Court has ruled that the due process clause of the Constitution applies to non-citizens when they are in the country. That's my quick answer for you on that. But again, here, look, just as an example, I mean, this is a Supreme Court ruling I just pulled up, and it says, its pronouncement that the due process clause protected all non-citizens as long as they had come into the U.S. made no distinction between. Anyway, so I don't want to get into a detailed discussion of this because I'm not a constitutional lawyer. But my understanding is that the Supreme Court has ruled that that part of the Constitution applies to non-citizens. But I leave it to you to go do more research on this. Yeah, from what I understand, there are Supreme Court rulings that say that even if somebody is here illegally, if they're in the country, the constitutional due process clause applies to them. Thank you, Aleph Tav. Now, you might not agree with, you might think it shouldn't, but that's, as I understand it, what the Supreme Court has said. Let's see here. All right, hey, we have about 5 minutes till, oh, hold on. I got video for you guys. I got some video. Hang on a moment. I should have video here. Why can I not see this video? Give me a moment. Just give me one moment here. Give me one moment. I got to put the video. I have briefing video of the briefing room. Just give me a moment. I have to get it on the screen for you. We didn't even, well, maybe we can quickly talk about President Trump's post about the pardons. All right, here we go. I'm putting the video on the screen for you. Give me a moment. I'm getting it on the screen. Trying to get it on the screen. Is this going to work? Let's see. I can see it. I can see it right now. I can see it right now. There it is. There's the room. There's the room. Let's get some volume. Do we have volume? I think they haven't turned on the volume. No, we're not muted. We're not muted. That is the room. You are looking at the room. Let me just get organized here. All right, obviously, that's too big. We're going to shrink that. We're going to shrink that. Put it over here. There's Peter Doocy from Fox News. Now, let me just, give me one moment here. Let me just make sure of something. I got to do something real quick to prepare to show this. Okay. Okay. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Now, let me get the other one up just to have it up there. Okay. Which one is this? Okay, I know what I have to do now. Okay. I will make this disappear for a second, but eventually I think I'm going to use that feed because that's a good feed. You can see the questioners. Okay, so get rid of that. Do this. Do this. Okay. Sorry, I'm just getting things organized so I can show this to you the way it'll be best for you. Good. I think we're good to go, I hope. Okay. I think there's still not sound from that. I think they still don't have the sound on in that bottom shot. Again, we have coverage of the White House press briefing. You can see it live there. Live coverage coming up. And after, we're going to show you some of the Pentagon and State Department briefings, because I think they're basically going to happen right after. A quick thank you to Fred Witherow for your support. Thank you so much, Fred. Also, thank you to Gordon Gott. He says, time for my chill pill. Thanks, Gordon, for your support. Also, Tim Glenn and Joner Games. Thanks for the membership, Joner Games. Tim thinks the price of eggs crowd needs something new to cling to. Now it is leave those foreign gangs alone, you Trumpers. And to be clear, the nature of the complaint is not, well, the nature of the general complaint I have heard from critics of the ignoring the judge's ruling and not turning the planes around is not that we want lots of gang members in the country who are committing crimes. It is that we think we want everyone who's removed to the country to have access to the due process that they are promised by law. By the way, real quick, one other thing that President Trump said today that I'm sure will be asked about is, which I know some of you know about, if I can pull it up here. Where is it? Where'd it go? Here, hold on. I'll put it on the screen. Put it right over here. President Trump said the pardons that sleepy Joe Biden gave to the unselect committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact they were done by autopen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. President Trump claimed that the pardons, I don't know if he's saying all pardons or some pardons that Joe Biden issued, he actually knew nothing about. That is what President Trump is claiming. He says the necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them. And the people that did may have committed a crime. There's no evidence provided for this claim. Therefore, those on the unselect committee who destroyed, this is the January 6th committee, who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed. They, again, no evidence provided. He says the people on the January 6th committee who were pardoned by Biden were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in history, of the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. So that is President Trump's claim. Again, no evidence provided for that claim. Oh, I got to fix the clock. Thank you. Because we're already after 1. Sorry, I was once we hit the deadline, once we hit the start time, it goes up. So I'll just change the headline here real quick. Any moment. White House press briefing. Let me real quick just fix this headline here. Oh, I think we have audio. Hey, we have audio. We have audio from the room. One of our viewers said, what is autopen? By the way, Axios reports other presidents have also used an autopen to grant pardons. It's a device used to make automatic or remote signatures. Axios says autopens have been used by celebrities and other public figures for decades, including John Bon Jovi and Bob Dylan. Axios also points it out that a 2005 opinion from the Bush administration Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel said a president may sign a bill by directing a subordinate to affix the president's signature to it. The New York Times says there is no power in the Constitution or case law to undo a pardon, and there is no exception to pardons signed by autopen. The Wall Street Journal says autopens are robotic machines programmed to imitate signatures and are frequently used by presidents, agency officials, and lawmakers to sign correspondence and legal documents. And past administrations, including the George W. Bush administration, said documents signed by autopen are legally valid. But again, the President Trump post about the pardons wasn't just saying he signed them by autopen. What President Trump claimed, without providing any evidence, is that pardons were issued by the Biden administration that President Biden wasn't aware of. That was his claim. Anyways, I'm guessing that will be asked about today as well. Angie J says, sounds like a DocuSign. They're going to have a video. When they play the video, I'm not sure what they're going to show. Sometimes right at the start, they'll do this thing sometimes where she's talking and the official White House feed will cut to the video. So I might even, well, I think I know how I'm going to play this. When the questions start, I might switch to the White House feed because the White House feed shows the actual questioners. So you might, early on in the press briefing, you might notice like a second delay or something when I switch the shot. You'll see it all, but just know that if you notice that there's like a second delay or something repeats for a second, that's because I switched it to the White House feed. Really appreciate you guys being with us for our coverage today of the briefings. Hey, thanks to our moderators, too. Thank you, moderators. Beth Mythical, Ruth Krafasi on YouTube. Thank you. Linda Bell Glary, Misha on X. Over there on Twitch. Big Ball of Yarn, Good Luck Duck. Idaho Star, I Got That Fire. Matthew Kohai 3, McBritches and Surly Dev. On Facebook, K. Lowry Body, Margaret Riley. Thank you so much to all of our moderators. Paul Anderson. Thanks Sharon, Klaas, and Goslin for subscribing, by the way. Also, Eve Richards, Lou Green, Margaret, and Kay. All of our other subscribers. Thanks to, hang on a second here, Mom of 457 Rose for your support. Thank you. And the Ringa X. Thank you, the Ringa X, for your support. And Udon Bale. And Aaron Easton. Thank you, Aaron Easton, for your support. Thanks for watching from the Netherlands, Sejan the Dutchman. 2-minute warning. We just heard the 2-minute warning. We just heard the 2-minute warning, guys. Just testing for when I have to switch. Okay, I think we're good. We'll also be updating you about any breaking news that might happen. The Houthi media Al Masira Houthi media reports that the Houthi Minister of Defense said, we possess capabilities and unpleasant surprises for our enemies, and the days will tell. Any moment now. Okay, I think, well, no. Karoline Leavitt's not there yet. The door is open. The door is open. It closed. The door closed. Thank you, Miss Christie, for watching. Thanks to all of our YouTube members and our Twitch and Facebook subscribers. I really appreciate it. Any moment now. I know it's any moment because they gave the 2-minute warning. Our viewer Antidot says, open the door. Mile High says, let's go sheesh. Here she comes.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Monday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I see a lot of us are very festive in our green. Peter Ducey, I like it. First today, I want to address the devastating tornadoes and storms that have impacted many states throughout the South and the Midwest. As of this morning, more than 40 innocent lives have been lost, and many communities have been totally destroyed. The President has been actively monitoring the situation, and the Trump administration is engaged with governors and local officials to restore and livelihoods. Everyone impacted is in our prayers. The President has had a very busy weekend, making our country and the world a much safer place. President Trump ordered decisive military action against the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. These Houthi terrorists have engaged in piracy, violence, and terrorism against American ships for years under the Biden administration, costing billions of dollars and putting innocent lives at risk. Joe Biden's pathetic weakness invited these unacceptable attacks. But there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Donald Trump. And the world is officially on notice. America has a commander-in-chief whose peace-through-strength approach is unwavering and should not be tested. As the president said, no terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing throughout the world. Houthi terrorists and their Iranian backers should not cross President Trump again, and the president has made that clear today. On another important matter, President Trump signed a proclamation invoking the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by the foreign terrorist organization Tren de Aragua. At the president's direction, the Department of Homeland Security carried out a counter-terrorism operation deporting nearly 200 violent Tren de Aragua terrorists, which will save countless American lives. Thanks to the great work of the Department of State, these heinous monsters were extracted and removed to El Salvador, where they will no longer be able to pose any threats to the American public. Tren de Aragua is one of the most ruthless terrorist gangs in the world, and they are responsible for some of the most heinous crimes that have occurred in our nation's history in recent years, including the savage murders of beautiful Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray. President Trump promised Laken and Jocelyn's families during his campaign that he would demand justice for their beautiful girls, and that's exactly what he did. As the president acknowledged during his inaugural address on January 20th, he pledged to invoke this act, and he has no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions. President Trump will continue his historic efforts to seal the border and prevent these illegal invaders from coming here in the first place. As the New York Times is acknowledged over the weekend, President Trump's policies are working. Here's how the Times summed it up. Illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border are down to their lowest level in decades. Once crowded migrant shelters are empty. Instead of heading north, people stranded in Mexico are starting to return home in bigger numbers. The border is almost unrecognizable from just a couple of years ago, when hundreds of thousands of people from around the world were crossing into the United States every month in scenes of chaos and upheaval. This is the Trump effect in action. And again, those are the words from the New York Times. We didn't need a border security bill. We just needed President Trump. All of these actions taken together are contributing to a wave of optimism about the direction of our great country. According to brand new polling from NBC News, more registered voters say the United States is heading in the right direction than at any point since early 2004. Americans support President Trump's common sense approach that's getting our country back on track in record time. Meanwhile, the president's critics can't say the same. That same new NBC poll also found that the Democrat Party has reached an all-time low in popularity. It turns out when you let your hatred of President Trump get in the way of doing what is best for America, the people reject you. Who would have thought? Joining us today in our new media seat is Kelly Meyer. She is a White House correspondent with News Nation. News Nation started in 2021 and is one of America's fastest growing cable news networks with a focus on news for all of America. It's part of a larger ecosystem, Nexstar, which is home to News Nation, the political website The Hill, the broadcast network The CW, and local Nexstar stations. With that, kick us off, please, Kelly.
Thank you, Karoline. What do you say to Americans who want safe streets but are concerned due process is being violated?
The president is using every lever of his executive authority and his constitutional authority within the bounds of the immigration laws of our country to ensure that our streets are safer for law-abiding American citizens. And this administration is focused on detaining, arresting, and deporting illegal criminal aliens. And as you saw this past weekend, the president used his authority under the Alien Enemies Act to deport foreign terrorists. Tren de Aragua is now a designated foreign terrorist organization. And as I said, there were nearly 200 Tren de Aragua members who were sent to El Salvador this weekend. Countless lives will be saved because of this action. And if you talk to the families, the Angel families, as I mentioned, Blake and Riley and Jocelyn Nungray, they understand the grave cost of life at the hands of these illegal terrorists. And the president is proud to deliver on that promise for them.
And just to follow up on that, this will be challenged later today in the courts. Does the president, does this allow him to defy the court order without having this the checks and balances and the separation of power?
No. In fact, this administration acted within the confines of the law, again, within the president's constitutional authority and under the authority granted to him under the Alien Enemies Act. We are quite confident in that, and we are wholly confident that we are going to win this case in court. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. If you guys can't send 200 Tren de Aragua terrorists at a time to El Salvador, where are you going to send them instead?
It's a very good question. You'd have to ask the courts and the people on the left who are trying to fight this administration for doing the business that this president sought out to do, which is to deport these foreign terrorists. And we're very grateful to President Bukele and to El Salvador for accepting these heinous monsters where they will face justice.
And if these guys are terrorists at war with the United States, is President Trump considering anything more lethal to address them than just sticking them on a plane somewhere else?
Well, it sounded like you had a little bit of curiosity in the premise of your question, so I want to address it. These are designated foreign terrorists. The president signed a proclamation on February 20th, 2025, designating TDA as a foreign terrorist organization that was in consultation with the Attorney General and the Secretary of Treasury. That was pursuant to 8 U.S. Code 1189. The president has the right to do that, and I think nobody would argue that Tren de Aragua should be designated a foreign terrorist organization. If you want to have that argument, I'm happy to do it. These are heinous monsters, rapists, murderers, kidnappers, sexual assaulters, predators who have no right to be in this country, and they must be held accountable.
And something different. There is now a member of the European Parliament from France who does not think the U.S. represents the values of the Statue of Liberty anymore. They want the Statue of Liberty back. So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country. Kelly.
Is the administration prepared to give the court what it wants in terms of the time of the flights that departed, that went to El Salvador, and some of those details that the judge is asking for in trying to determine the timing? Clearly, the 5 named individuals were not deported.
That's right.
in compliance. But looking more broadly, wanting to know about the timing of flights and so forth, because the verbal order did say turn around the flights if there's an issue. So is the administration prepared to provide that information?
I'm prepared to provide it right now. All of the planes that were subject to the written order, the judge's written order, took off before the order was entered in the courtroom on Saturday. And the administration will, of course, be happily answering all of those questions that the judge poses in court later today.
And for people who have due process questions about making certain that there wasn't anyone who was swept up who did not meet the criteria that you laid out, is there a way for the administration to provide more detail about how that was determined, who the individuals were that met this deportation order?
Yes, I can assure the American people that Customs and Border Patrol and ICE and the Department of Homeland Security are sure about the identities of the individuals who were on these planes and the threat that they pose to our homeland. They take this incredibly seriously. They are putting their lives on the line to deport these designated terrorists from our country, and they should be trusted to do that. And that's exactly what the American people elected this president to do.
Thanks, Caroline. Just to follow up on that then, so you're saying definitively that the administration can prove everyone that was put on those flights to El Salvador was either a member of Tren de Aragua, MS-13, or some other entity?
We've already provided the breakdown in the effort of transparency about the 261 illegal aliens who were deported. 137 of those were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. 101 of those were Venezuelans removed via Title VIII, which, as you know, are just regular immigration proceedings. And 23 of them were MS-13 Salvadorian gang members. There were also 2 MS-13 ringleaders as part of that group of 23 who President Bukele particularly expressed his gratitude for their return so he can demand justice in his home country. Jennifer.
What criteria, though, other than, say, tattoos or maybe being in the wrong place at the wrong time, are they using to determine that someone is actually a member of one of these organizations?
Intelligence and the men and women on the ground in the interior of our country who are finally being allowed to do their jobs. Their hands were tied under the previous administration, and as I said, they take their jobs very seriously. They should be trusted and respected by the American public with this operation, and of course, as I said to Kelly, the administration will provide all details to the questions that the court poses. Jennifer.
One more follow-up on that. Can you say how much the U.S. is paying El Salvador to imprison these Venezuelans? And then a different question on Russia. I was wondering if you could give us an update on the ceasefire negotiations, and is there anything you can share on the list that Putin passed along to President Trump for the things he's requesting?
Sure. To your first question, it was approximately $6 million to El Salvador for the detention of these foreign terrorists. And I would point out that is pennies on the dollar in comparison to the cost of life and the cost it would impose on the American taxpayer to house these terrorists in maximum security prisons here in the United States of America. And I would echo the message of our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who expressed his gratitude to President Bukele and El Salvador's government for their cooperation in this deal. As for Russia, as you know, the president announced last night on Air Force One on his return from his very busy weekend in Florida that he will be speaking to President Putin tomorrow. I won't get ahead of those negotiations, but I can say we are on the 10th yard line of peace, and we've never been closer to a peace deal than we are in this moment. And the president, as you know, is determined to get one done. Sure, Caitlin.
I have 2 questions for you. One on the flights, but first on the president's post overnight, saying that the pardons that were issued by President Biden preemptively to members of the January 6th committee, that they're now null and void. Have attorneys here at the White House told President Trump that he has the legal authority to undo a pardon simply because it was signed by autopen, as he said?
The president was begging the question that I think a lot of journalists in this room should be asking about whether or not the former president of the United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired. I know it took people some time to finally admit that, but we all know that to be true, as evidenced by his disastrous debate performance against President Trump during the campaign. I digress on that. But the president was raising the point that did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge? And that's not just the president or me raising those questions, Caitlin. According to the New York Post, there are Biden officials from the previous White House who raised those questions and wondered if the president was even consulted about his legally binding signature being signed onto documents. And so I think it's a question that everybody in this room should be looking into, because certainly that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior if staff members were signing the President of the United States autograph without his consent.
Is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out.
Okay,
Sean.
on the flights, so I have a question on the timeline of the flights. You keep talking about the judge's written order, which hit the docket Saturday night at about 7:26 p.m., but he issued a verbal order before that at about 6:45 and 6:48 p.m. based on the court hearing, a verbal order from the bench. Does the White House feel the need to comply with a verbal order from this judge?
Again, as I said, all of the planes subject to the written order of this judge departed U.S. soil, U.S. territory before the judge's written order.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were
Well,
in the air?
there's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order, as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court. Sean.
Hey, so on Friday, the president suggested at length that it should be illegal to criticize judges, but he has repeatedly criticized judges who rule against him, and Elon Musk is calling for impeachment of judges who have opposed the administration. So how are those two things not in conflict?
I have not heard the president talk about impeaching judges. I know you mentioned Mr. Musk's tweet, but I have not heard the president of the United States ask that. Mary.
Hey, thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about this video I saw this morning set to the tune of, I believe, Closing Time, about deportations of illegal migrants. What's the strategy behind the White House's videos they've been putting out on this, and can you kind of talk us through the thinking on these videos?
Sure. I think the White House and our entire government clearly is leaning into the message of this president, and we are unafraid to double down and to take responsibility and ownership of the serious decisions that are being made. The president was elected with an overwhelming mandate to launch the largest mass deportation campaign in American history, and that's exactly what he is doing. And to this very day, we are now, I think, 56 or 7 days into the administration by my count. The president still receives an overwhelming public support for the policies that he is enacting. So we are unafraid to message effectively what the president is doing on a daily basis to make our communities safer. And the specific video you referenced, I think it sums up our immigration policy pretty well. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. I have two questions. First, will President Trump put sanctions on Russia if the talks on Tuesday don't go as hoped? And secondly, have any illegal immigrants self-deported through CBP home yet?
To your first question, it's something the president has floated, and certainly he's willing to do if necessary. I don't have anything to read out, and I would never get ahead of the president on such a serious decision. To your second question about the CBP Home app, I would have to check in with the Department of Homeland Security, but it's a great question, and we're very proud to repurpose this app, which the Biden administration abused to facilitate the mass illegal entry of illegal immigrants into our country. It was like a fast pass at Disneyland. That's not happening under this administration. We are encouraging illegal immigrants to actively self-deport to maybe save themselves from being in one of these fun videos.
Caroline.
Sure. John, good to
Thank
see you.
After President Trump strafe-bombed the Houthis yesterday, he said that if they retaliate, he was going to personally hold Iran accountable for that. Holding them accountable, what would that look like?
Well, I would defer you to what the president put out this morning, John, where he said very clearly, I will read it, "Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen, who are hated by the Yemeni people, are all created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that the force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they've lost control, but they haven't lost control. They are dictating every move, giving them the weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire." That is a statement from the President of the United States just moments ago. I have nothing additional to share, but our message to Iran is you better take this president seriously, and I think the Houthis learned that the hard way this past weekend. As I said in my opening remarks, there's a new sheriff in town, and this president is not just going to sit on his hands and allow terrorists to launch attacks on commercial vessels and U.S. naval ships. Those actions will not be tolerated. Sure, Edward.
Yeah, thanks. Caroline, on the economy. So after mostly a down week last week in the economy, you've been very vocal, as well as other cabinet members, about how we're in a transition and about how this economic transition, and there's a plan, a long-term plan for tariffs on this. How concerned is the president that the markets and Americans, for lack of a better term, will freak out over these tariffs and be concerned about a long-term plan?
Sure. I think I've been asked this question and answered this question respectfully, Edward. We are in a period of transition. The president has made that clear. He also has made his belief in tariffs and what they will do for our great country clear, restoring wealth back to our country. And if you look at the president's first-term economic formula, massive deregulation, tax cuts, lowering the cost of living with an energy boom, which the American people can expect soon. Wall Street and Main Street should both be assured by what President Trump did in his first term. It's the exact same formula. In fact, I would argue it's even better this time around. And if you look at some of the economic indicators in the last week, the latest CPI report last week beat expectations. Inflation is cooling. Core inflation dropped for the first time in 4 months. The national average of the price of gas is down 42 cents from 1 year ago. And there was also a new report out this morning about wholesale egg prices. They continue to fall. A dozen eggs are now $3.10 cheaper since January 24th. First, that's a 47% decrease overall. So I think the American people do have great reason to be optimistic about this economy. And as I've said repeatedly, it continues to be true. The administration has a whole of government effort to fix the economic mess created by Biden.
So the president's pointed to that April 2nd tariff deadline, so to speak. Is the tariff back and forth sort of done now? We're just all looking towards April 2nd?
Well, I think the president would tell you that all options are always on the table, and he's always ready to respond if he feels the United States is being unfairly treated by our allies and also our competitors around the world. But yes, the April 2nd day is a big day for the country, as the president has said. Reciprocal tariffs will go into effect. We'll have more details on that as the date nears, but our entire trade team, Secretary Lookner, Secretary Bessent, the vice president has been quite involved in these talks and discussions as well about what that will look like. And the president, as you always do, you will hear from him directly on it. Deborah Saunders, how are you?
Fine. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Former pardon attorney Elizabeth Boyer believes she was fired for refusing to sign off on a move to restore gun rights to actor Mel Gibson. DOJ's Todd Blanche says no. But I want to know, is the administration dedicated to restoring gun rights to felons who served their times? I ask this because I've talked to people who were pardoned. They felt that was important. Of course, this isn't necessarily for a pardon. What is the president's thinking on this issue?
Sure.
After you've served your sentence, should you have gun rights?
It's an important question. It is one I have not spoken to the president about on his views, but I will take it to him this afternoon. I will tell him you asked, and we will get you an answer. You're welcome. Jonathan.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. A question for you regarding the administration complying with judges' orders. I want to ask about an administration spokesperson who's the border czar, Tom Homan. He was on Fox News.
We love Tom Homan.
And he was talking about the deportations, and he said the following. He said, "We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think," which seems to me, just reading that, that you don't care what orders come from the federal bench. Is that the case? Can you clarify that, please?
Well, I think since you just quoted Tom, I'll quote Tom. He said, I don't care what the judges think, but I can assure you that the administration is complying with the court order. And as I've said repeatedly from this podium, all of the flights that were subject to the judge's written order departed before the written order, and we are prepared to make that case in court later this afternoon. Reagan.
And then if I could, on Russia, the president, as you pointed out, Caroline, made some remarks on Air Force One coming back from Florida, and he seemed to indicate that the conversation tomorrow concerns essentially dividing up assets, dividing up territory associated with the war in Ukraine. Has President Zelensky given President Trump that authority? Is that what is going to take place tomorrow?
Well, as you know, the president and his entire national security team have been engaged directly with President Zelensky and the Ukrainian team, and that has been part of the discussion between the president's team and the Ukrainians. As for where those lines will be drawn or any specifics, I am not going to get into that from this podium. It would be unwise for me to get ahead of the president's call with President Putin tomorrow. But again, I can assure you, in the effort of transparency, as this president always does, you will hear from him or one of us directly after that phone call tomorrow. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. There's a lot of focus on the judicial branch right now. The president has about 40 judicial appointments that he could make at this moment. Do you have an update on what the timeline would look like for those judicial appointments? And does the president have a list of potential nominees that he's vetting?
I do not have an update on a timeline, nor do I have a list, but I can certainly have our team gather that for you and provide it. You're welcome. Sure. Go ahead. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. So the president is visiting the Kennedy Center this afternoon to
He
attend
is.
a board meeting. A question about what happened a few weeks ago. The Kennedy Center got bomb threats targeting a performance by Shingun Performing Arts, which is an American company showcasing China before communism. This company has been targeted, unfortunately, by the CCP for years. I'm wondering if this administration has a response to this, and also as the president is putting an emphasis on arts and culture, what's the administration's message to potentially foreign state actors who are trying to disrupt that in the U.S.?
Don't disrupt it. This administration will take that very seriously and hold you accountable. We obviously condemn any violence or threats of violence against American institutions. And the president will be traveling to the Kennedy Center later this afternoon. I look forward to going with him. As you know, he is now the chairman of the board of the Kennedy Center, where he hopes to restore arts and culture that embrace American tradition, don't disparage it, as we have unfortunately seen over the past several years. The president will be doing a tour of the center. In his business developer mind, I'm sure he will make some recommendations on how the center itself can be improved, but also we'll be discussing perhaps some future plays and musicals and theatrical programs that the center will be hosting under his new leadership and the board's new leadership. Daniel.
Will the president be discussing with Putin tomorrow the future of Volodymyr Zelensky, sort of a follow-up to John's question?
Again, I've been asked and answered this question now. I'm not going to get ahead of the president's discussion tomorrow, but after the phone call takes place, I can certainly provide a readout. Daniel.
Caroline, thank you so much. You mentioned earlier in the briefing that you guys are at the 10-yard line of peace. Given the amount of progress that you've made in such a short amount of time, is that an indictment of the previous administration's foreign policy stance, and is it just more proof that you need to talk to people to sort of get things done?
I think so. I think the previous administration is the reason this war began. As President Trump often says, this war would have never started if he were still in office. It only started because of the incompetence and the weakness of the previous administration, and President Trump is very proud of the progress that he and his team have made in such a short amount of time, and hopefully tomorrow that progress will move forward. Sure.
Thanks. There have been some media reports just in the last few hours that the administration has decided to withdraw from the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, which is designed to hold Putin accountable for war crimes. Are you able to confirm that? And if that has occurred, why has that occurred?
I'm not able to confirm it because I have not heard that. I will caution, I know there have been many inaccurate and misleading reports from Reuters lately, so I would caution anybody taking that seriously, but I can check in and get back to you. Rachel.
Thanks, Caroline. Is it the president's belief that the Justice Department should be investigating members of the January 6th Select Committee? Is he directing the DOJ to do that?
As the president made it very clear in his address on Friday, I believe some of you were there, I was there, he made his vision for what he would like to see of the Department of Justice very clear, but he said that he has appointed great people in Attorney General Pam Bondi and also in our FBI Director Kash Patel to do what they think is best for our justice system and to stop the weaponization of justice that we saw under the previous administration against not just President Trump but his supporters as well. We want to restore the Department of Justice to an institution that focuses on fighting law and order and crime and putting real criminals behind bars, not targeting Americans because of their religion or their political speech. We saw that under the previous administration and it's unacceptable to this president.
And just to follow up really quickly on just Homan's comments from earlier, a few weeks ago in the Oval Office, the president said he will always abide by the courts. We heard what Tom Homan said earlier today. So I'm only asking just to be clear for the American people. It is the administration's belief that that you feel like you are bound to comply by the judge's orders?
We are complying with the judge's orders.
Question on the storm.
Sure.
What role does the president see for FEMA with these storms? He's talking about getting rid of FEMA, states handling their own disasters. Does he plan to change how the federal government responds to these storms?
There hasn't been a change yet. That doesn't mean there couldn't be in the future. But as of right now, the president, the entire administration are actively monitoring the storms, as I said. In fact, before I came down here, there was an email note in my inbox from the Department of Homeland Security on what they are actually doing state by state across the board. So rest assured, Secretary Noem and her team is on it, and I would defer you to the Department of Homeland Security for any further details.
One more question. The president referenced power plants with a conversation with Vladimir Putin. What is he referring to with power plants? What is that?
There's a power plant that is on the border of Russia and Ukraine that was up for discussion with the Ukrainians, and he will address it in his call with Putin tomorrow.
The nuclear plant.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Caroline?
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you if you would be releasing more granular data about the people who were sent to El Salvador this week. Particularly, will you be releasing their names?
I don't believe so because of the privacy concerns at this point in time. That doesn't mean we won't eventually. I would defer you to the Department of Homeland Security for more details on the individuals on the flights, but we have been incredibly transparent in giving you the breakdown of the numbers and also some of the crimes committed by these heinous criminals and individuals: kidnapping, sexual abuse of a child, robbery, aggravated assault on a police officer. I would remind everybody in this room that Tren de Aragua is a foreign terrorist organization operating within the United States of America because the previous administration allowed them to invade our country. These are monsters who tortured, raped, and murdered a 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungre. They murdered 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. They led a multi-state sex trafficking operation involving smuggling women into the United States, holding them in stash houses in Louisiana, Florida, New Jersey, Texas, and Virginia, and forcing them into prostitution. They kidnapped and murdered a 33-year-old woman in Texas. They sexually and physically assaulted a woman and her daughter in Wisconsin. They conducted a mass shooting in Illinois. They peddled untraceable ghost guns across New York City, took over an Aurora, Colorado apartment complex where they kidnapped and tortured victims. And by the way, many of you in the mainstream media said that didn't happen. It turned out that it did. And because of the effective immigration policies of this administration, those foreign terrorists were detained and they are no longer operating on American soil, and we have President Trump to thank for that. We'll see you guys later at the Kennedy Center. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Caroline.
All right, that was the press briefing. There you go. So we are going to take your comments on the briefing, and there is a State Department press briefing which is supposed to start in, oops, hey, look, my headline's all messed up. Let me fix the headline first of all. State Department press briefing coming up in about 13 minutes. I'm guessing there might be some Iran questions, some questions about the Houthis. So let me fix the headline here. Then I'm going to take some comments from you guys about the White House press briefing. And we are going to check in on the State Department press briefing. Coming up, State Department and Pentagon briefings. We might even hear from President Trump. I don't know if I'm going to have video of him at the Kennedy Center. It's possible the White House will be showing that. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that. Just give me one moment here. Let me just pull up here. Oh, look, I already have it. Look at this. Starting soon. Also, I don't have video from that yet. I don't have a video of the room. Okay, I want to take some. What did you guys think of the White House press briefing? By the way, thanks so much for your support. Ben Moyes. Thanks, Ben Moyes. Also, Robert S. Jordan. So nice of you. Thank you. And Devil Doc over there on Twitch. Thanks for subscribing. All right, so that's coming up, as you can see on your screen. Let's see here. Fred, thank you for applying to be a moderator on X. X does not, at this moment, we do not have the capacity to add moderators on X. I hope, it's just the way it is right now. So I'm hoping they end up switching it. But right now, we can't add anyone. I think that's the way for everyone. That's not just for my channel. So hopefully that'll change, but it's limited over there right now. Let's see. Allie C says, what is happening at the Kennedy Center? I should tell you what the schedule, the White House schedule says that President Trump is going to be participating in a Kennedy Center board meeting and tour. That's today. And let me pull up something about that. Look right here. Hold on, I'll show you real quick. Trump will visit the Kennedy Center as he puts his mark on the National Arts Institution. AP says President Trump will visit the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, where he'll take a tour and attend a board meeting. It will be the first time at the venerable institution since he began remaking it at the start of his second term in office. Trump fired the previous board of the Kennedy Center, writing on social media, "They do not share our vision for a golden age in arts and culture." He replaced them with loyalists and made himself chairman. Trump's allies have complained that the Kennedy Center, which is known for its annual celebration of notable American artists, had become too liberal and woke with programming. President Trump told reporters last night on Air Force One, "We have to straighten it out. It's not a good situation." The Kennedy Center opened in 1971. It has enjoyed bipartisan support over the years. However, Trump has a fraught relationship with it, says AP, dating to his first term as president. He skipped the annual honors ceremony each year, breaking with tradition. Ellen Zen thought it was a great press briefing. Oh, by the way, thanks so much to PZ Papazulu, who thinks Karoline Leavitt is a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much, PZ Papazulu. It's really nice of you. Thanks also to Robert S. Jordan as well. In a few minutes, we're going to have the daily press briefing. Oh, Robert S. Jordan from the Department of State mentioned this story. Robert S. Jordan, Trump administration says South African ambassador has to leave the U.S. by Friday. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, announced this decision in a post on X. He accused the ambassador from South Africa, Ibrahim Rasool, of being a race-baiting politician who hates President Trump. His post linked to a story by the conservative Breitbart news site about a talk Rasool gave earlier Friday in Johannesburg. Rasool spoke about actions taken by the Trump administration in the context of the U.S., where white people would no longer be in the majority. I did not see that video conference. It is highly unusual for the U.S. to expel a foreign ambassador, although lower-ranking diplomats are more frequently targeted with persona non grata status. Rubio's mood decision was the latest Trump administration move targeting South Africa. Trump signed an executive order last month halting funding to the country. It criticized the black-led South African government on multiple fronts, saying it is pursuing anti-white policies at home and supporting bad actors in the world like Hamas and Iran. A statement last week from the office of the South African president said it had noted the regrettable expulsion of the ambassador and called on its diplomatic officials to maintain the established diplomatic decorum in their engagement with the matter. And it said South Africa maintains committed to building a mutually beneficial relationship with the United States of America. That could be asked about today too. Oops, hold on. Where is there? Could be asked about today. President Trump is supposed to meet with Putin tomorrow. That could be asked about in the State Department press briefing. President Trump and Putin will speak Tuesday on about the war in Ukraine. Also, I'm sure there'll be questions in the State Department press briefing about President Trump's announcement of a new, what he calls it, decisive military action against the Houthis in Yemen. I saw a report just a few minutes ago. I think there might have been more reported airstrikes in let me pull this up here, in Yemen. Yes, so just a half an hour ago, the Houthi media said that there was a strike in the Al-Arj area in Bajil district in Yemen. And that was a half an hour ago. Oh, also 12 minutes ago, Houthi media Al Masira reported a U.S. strike destroys an iron factory with airstrikes. U.S. airstrikes destroy an iron factory in Al Salif district. That's according to Houthi media. So these strikes are going on. By the way, tomorrow, I am planning on covering tomorrow the return of the astronauts, the two astronauts, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore, who have been on the space station for 9 months. That is going to be, they're supposed to splash down at 5:57 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So we'll come on a bit before then and cover that. That is the plan. Simp Nasty says, can't wait to see that. Matthew Kohai says, wonderful to hear. They will be landing. You know, I don't know exactly where they're going to be. I'm looking at a press release right now. Some of you might know. I don't have it right here. Dr. Weebles believes it'll be off the coast of Florida. Do I have video yet from this? Oh, hold on. Hold on a moment. Hang on a moment. Give me one moment. I might have video in a second from the room where this State Department press briefing is going to be. Then the Pentagon press briefing is supposed to be at 2:45. Just give me a moment here. I want to just pull something up. Okay. If I get video from the briefing room, The Pentagon, the State Department briefing is supposed to start in 2 minutes. But those 2 astronauts have been up there since last June. So I'm guessing we'll have Ukraine questions, Houthi questions, Iran questions. President Trump said today on social media that any new attacks or retaliations from the Houthis would be considered as if they came from Iran, because Iran backs the Houthis, and warned Iran about this. Oh, thank you so much, Bebop and Rocksteady. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for shouting out our moderators. Pink Volo says the astronauts will need some serious physical therapy when they get back. Our viewer Antidot says, what happens if the Houthis don't want to stop their activities? Well, we'll have to see. Flowers thought it was a propaganda briefing. Connor Garrity says, happy St. Patrick's Day to all Irish Americans. Yes, for those who celebrate, happy St. Patrick's Day. Part of the plan says we've never had a president that has done or will do what Trump is doing. Aaron B. says Trump ain't playing. Hey, thanks so much, Inked Patriot, for being a member. We are waiting any moment now. The State Department press briefing will start. I've also been checking for breaking news updates. You know, I'm guessing there might be, I'm guessing there will be questions about, you know, this was asked about a bunch during the previous briefing, but about this whole question of whether the U.S., the Trump administration, violated a judge's order. We've been talking about this story. Real quick, I'll show you that headline. Trump administration deports hundreds of immigrants even as a judge orders their removals be stopped. So this judge over the weekend had told the Trump administration to turn planes around, carrying people who had been deported from the U.S. without hearings, I believe, which the Trump administration did after citing a law from 1798, which basically allows people to be deported from a country from another country in wartime when the U.S. is at war. But and there were reportedly several planes in the air. I think 2 planes. I don't know if it's 2 or 3. Several planes in the air that the judge said verbally the planes need to be turned around, but they were never turned around. You heard in the press briefing today, Karoline Leavitt say that the written order was not violated, and she said that the administration is going to argue that, I think something like she said that she believed the administration has questions as to what force of law the oral order had. I don't know, but she kept saying over and over again that the written order had been complied with. Brazy thinks he's setting the precedent that he is the only authority. But I'm pretty darn sure that'll be asked about. NWO Style mentions that there are reports of attacks on Yemen. Yeah, thanks NWO Style. I just mentioned a couple of those reports from. There have been periodic reports of attacks of U.S. strikes in Yemen for the last couple of days. Mark, our viewer, wrote in and said, sad to see that Karoline Leavitt removed her cross necklace, some kind of pressure campaign for her to deny her faith. I didn't notice that. I mean, if it's true, maybe she just felt like not wearing it today. I don't know. I haven't heard any reporting about that. Any moment now, State Department press briefing. Our viewer, Wickedest Witch, believes that the president has no constitutional authority to deprive persons of rights contrary to the law of the land. Kevin Groves, our viewer, says, I can't see the Houthis stopping without a ground invasion. Airstrikes are not decisive by themselves. Thanks, Eve Richards, for subscribing, by the way, over there on Facebook. And Sharon Klassen Goslin and Ralph Stallworth. Thanks so much, Ralph, for subscribing. Thanks to our moderators who are here. We have moderating right now. Cynthia Moon is over there on YouTube. Thank you, Cynthia. I really appreciate it. Also, Linda Belk, Larry, Misha on X, on Facebook, Paul Anderson, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley. Thank you so much. On Twitch, Big Ball of Yarn, Good Luck Duck, Idaho Star, I Got That Fire, Matthew Kohai, McBritches, and Surly Dev. Let me also just shout out a couple other people here while we have a second. Thanks to our subscribers on Twitch, just to name a few: Tegrity Farmer Bob, Wall Street Shaggy, Devil Doc, Matthew Kohai 3, Ruben Amorim, Curly Crystal Clear, Billy Joe, Notorious Rob. Thanks for subscribing over there on Twitch. And thanks to our YouTube members, too. People like Danny G, Confidence in God, M, Evelyn in Maine, Mr. Captain Snacks, Bluesy Girl, Christy Warshower, Marnie, Wickedest Witch, Caitlin Hill, Sabin Nation, Inked Patriot, Jimmy and the Vet, Bluesy Girl, Rule the Lucky Minute, M, Journey with Jamie, Ane, all of our other YouTube members too. I have video. I have video from the room. I have video from the briefing room, I think. Yes, I do. Here we go. Video from the briefing room. I think. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I know what I need to do. Give me a moment here. There, that's what I need to do. Why is this not? Why? Oh, I see. There it is. Live video from the briefing room. With audio. Department of State. Robert S. Jordan, I haven't heard of any kind of new Houthi attack. I mentioned that yesterday Fox News had mentioned that a bunch of drones had been fired. Lucas Tomlinson of Fox News had mentioned a bunch of drones had been fired by Houthis at the U.S. carrier group, but that no damage had been caused. I've not heard reports of a new one. I'll check into that, but maybe they were referring to that one. I've been checking today. Yeah, yesterday, the Houthis also claimed that they had attacked it again a second time, but nothing's been confirmed by the military, and I haven't heard anything reported about that. Yeah, Newsweek just says the Houthis have claimed they have carried out attacks on the aircraft carrier Truman. But sometimes, you know, just because the Houthis say it doesn't mean it's true. But maybe we'll hear more today about Houthi drones or missiles fired at the U.S. carrier group. But no reports of damage right now to any kind of U.S. asset from any Houthi attacks the last couple days. I'll let you know if I hear more. Thank you so much, Robert S. Jordan. I really appreciate that. Robert S. Jordan, thank you. So nice of you. Keep Shopping says Houthis aren't a reliable news source. No, I would not call them reliable when they talk about attacks on...
Thank you, sir.
The West. Oh, hold on a second.
Hi.
Hold on. Let me get this up here.
Right. Hi. How are you doing? All right. Natalie. How are you? Nice to see Andrea Mitchell here again. Thank you. How are you doing?
Really quickly, guys, I'm going to zoom in on her. If you want to see the sign language, you can go to the White House. You can go to the State Department social media.
Start with a little bit of a
During
statement
my
here
first
today.
briefing,
Welcome aboard,
I
everyone.
said that under
Nice to
President
see you.
Trump, peace through strength is back. That was clear from day one under this administration. The 11 days since my first briefing have further proven it. In an important advancement for peace, America's top diplomat, Secretary Marco Rubio, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz traveled to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, to meet with the Ukrainian delegation. As a result, Ukraine expressed readiness to accept the U.S. proposal to enact an immediate interim 30-day ceasefire to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The ball is now in Russia's court, and even more advances have been made after Envoy Witkoff's visit there as well. Following this historic meeting, Secretary Rubio traveled to the G7 in Canada, where our partners expressed support for a swift end and a durable end to this conflict. And as we pursued peace, our nation also showed strength. Under the President's direction, this administration invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to initiate the removal of hundreds of dangerous members of the Tren de Aragua, a vicious, violent foreign terrorist organization, which has been threatening our nation, conducting irregular warfare, and terrorizing Americans. We express our sincere gratitude to President Bukele of El Salvador for playing a pivotal role in this transfer. As Secretary Rubio said, once again, President Bukele has shown he is not only the strongest security leader in our region, he is also a great friend of the United States. In our fight against terrorists, President Trump ordered the launch of decisive and powerful U.S. military deterrence operations against the Iranian-backed Houthi terrorists in Yemen. Following the strikes, Secretary Rubio noted that the president, quote, sent a powerful and clear message. These attacks on U.S. vessels and global shipping must stop, and we will hold you accountable. We will protect our people and freedom of navigation. In furtherance of President Trump's maximum pressure policy on the Iranian regime, last week the State Department announced sanctions on Iran's oil minister and shadow fleet that facilitates Iran's illicit crude oil trade. These actions were taken to stop the flow of revenue to the Iranian regime that uses to fuel conflict in the Middle East, advances its nuclear program, and supports its terrorist proxies. In addition, the State Department will consider revoking the visas of foreigners who have supported Hamas and unleashed anti-Semitic harassment, intimidation, vandalism, and violence on America's college campuses. As Secretary Rubio said on March 6th, those who support designated terrorist organizations, including Hamas, threaten U.S. national security. And we intend to use the department's broad authority to revoke visas when information comes to light indicating a visa holder may be inadmissible or ineligible under U.S. immigration law. Here's the bottom line. Secretary Rubio's State Department remains committed to advancing the national interests of the United States. Peace through strength is back. Not that we have a lot of things to discuss, and I see it all on your faces, but it is good to be back. I've been away for, I don't know, 10 days now or so, but I'm looking forward to answering your questions. We will begin again with Matt Lee.
Thank you, Tammy. I had three processy kind of questions, but for the sake of my colleagues, and I know there's a lot to ask, I'll break it down to two. They'll be very brief.
All right.
One, on the South African ambassador who the Secretary declared PNG on Friday.
Sure.
The South Africans seem to be a little bit miffed that they learned about this from a X post. And I understand there was a meeting at which a formal diplomatic note explaining this was handed over. Can you, what day was that, the meeting?
Well, it was the same day
of
the announcement, yes. So after Secretary Rubio made his decision, our senior level diplomats convoked the South African embassy staff for an in-person meeting at the State Department. At this meeting, our officials delivered the official notification of Ambassador Rasool's persona non grata status, and it was done.
Okay, and I understand that his privileges and immunities expire today, and then he has to leave by Friday?
That's right. So he has, for these 3 days that passed, he's had his privileges, but those did expire today. And he has, technically it's a week from the notice, and so that expires now on Friday.
Okay.
He'll need to be out of the country.
Okay. And then my second one is what you mentioned before on the AEA, the Alien Enemies Act. As you know, as this building certainly knows, there are several provisions that or several criteria that have to be met in order to invoke this. One is there being a declaration of war with the country in which this force is from, or that the invasion or incursion, or however you want to call it, is being orchestrated or influenced by a sovereign state. Does the U.S. now regard Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate head of state of Venezuela? And secondly, if you do, or even if you don't, are Maduro and the state of Venezuela now covered by the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act?
You know, just before I came up here, my colleague, Karoline Leavitt, had a great deal to say about this. This belongs at the White House. This is a dynamic that's happening out of the White House.
This is a legal.
Well, but I also, in addition to that fact of referring you back to the White House and to DHS regarding this, this is in the courts. And as you know, I'm not going to pontificate on or guess or muse about what's going on with the courts at this point. So clearly the White House has been very transparent. Karoline was very clear this afternoon about their approach. Clearly, they feel that this is something they want to litigate, and they're going to. And for the good of the American public, it's an important thing to do. Everything we know that the Trump administration is doing, certainly President Trump himself and his team, is in the interests of the United States.
I understand
and that's why he was elected. People are excited about the nature of the actions that we're taking swiftly. And this is one of them, and we will see it play out in court, and that's the extent of what
my question is not about.
So now there's a third section. I thought you said you were going to forego the third part.
No, I'd just like to have an answer to the first question. Does the U.S. consider Nicolas Maduro to be the
I'm not going to discuss with you again a national issue that belongs both with the White House and the Secretary himself, so I'm not going to be able to remark on that. All right. Based on the same dynamic here, I guess, for the Americas, the situation, Andrea Mitchell, please.
This is related to the immigration issue.
Sure.
And peace through strength.
Sure.
Does Secretary Rubio believed that if Afghanistan is among the countries that are there on a list, a draft list to be banned, that legitimate SIVs who were approved by the State Department during the fall of Afghanistan and withdrawal should be a carve-out, and that these people who help the State Department, the CIA, the DOD, can come and have refugee status. And I do have a follow-up.
Well, first of all, there is no list. What people are looking at over these last several days is not a list that exists here that is being acted on. There is a review, as we know through the President's executive order, for us to look at the nature of what's going to help keep America safer in dealing with the issue of visas and who's allowed into the country. But what has been touted as something that is an item through the State Department, it just simply isn't the case. So the premise, I have to say, I certainly can't speak to because it's not accurate. When it comes to the nature of Afghanistan and those who have helped us, the arrangements we've made already in the past, getting as many people from that conflict here, certainly those who have assisted us and worked with us, that's been a policy and a dynamic that we've worked on from certainly even the previous administration, working to try to get that happening. So that's not something that is certainly I can talk about regarding something that doesn't exist, but certainly when that review is done, we'll have something that we can discuss.
Okay, then let me ask you also
yes.
About your view, the Secretary's view, about the legality of a foreign country holding an American citizen from Iowa who has not been charged with any crime and holding his passport and not permitting him to return home in the case of what's happening in Punta Cana and the Dominican Republic, where this young man and his family and his lawyers say that he has not been permitted to leave the Dominican Republic, that he has been a cooperating witness, he's not charged with any crime. Does the State Department have any view about the rights of that U.S. citizen?
Well, I think what's appropriate here is for me to not to, this is unfortunately the nature of the State Department and what we do. When it comes to diplomatic efforts, whether they exist or not, the nature of legal frameworks for individuals, the privacy issues involved, that's not something I can get into any detail about.
He has spoken publicly, and his family have. Does he have consular access?
Well, that's his. I think all of us have a right to speak and to be known, but we have a standard and a protocol here that we won't discuss a private situation, a private case. Certainly, when it comes to diplomacy, diplomatic relationships between one country and another, I'm not going to go into those details. All right, Sean.
Thanks. Can I go back to South Africa, the ambassador?
Sure.
The secretary, of course, had his ex posted on Friday. Could you explain a little bit the reasons? It's quite an extraordinary step. I was looking back. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, even in the height of tensions with Russia, there was no expulsion of the ambassador and no PNG there. What is it? I mean, essentially, this is remarks that the ambassador made at a think tank or at a conference that were critical. What I'm getting at is, should other ambassadors be on alert? Can they not criticize President Trump without fear of being expelled?
Well, I think it's not about criticism. This was the equation of the president and the country with white supremacy. It was an allegation that casts such an awful light on the nature of the country, on individuals. It is. I mean, if we don't have a standard about the nature of someone who is in this country, who is supposed to be a diplomat to help facilitate the relationship between two countries, and that this is the standard of it, you know, we deserve better. We've had a decent level of diplomacy with South Africa. There are some challenges, but you want people in each embassy who can actually facilitate a relationship. And these remarks were unacceptable to the United States, not just to the president, but to every American. They were pretty much obscene when it came to the nature of what was alleged, so. That is, I think, at the very least, what we should expect is a standard of some respect, basic, low-level respect, if you're in a position that is going to help facilitate any kind of diplomatic relationship with another country. This particular individual certainly didn't meet that standard, and it is a message to people of what America expects, what the president expects, what the Secretary of State expects, what this whole administration expects when it comes to treatment of the nation itself and as a result of the people in this country. And so that's why it was done.
Sure, could just expand on that. South Africa today said that it wants to have a better relationship with the United States. Are you open to that? I mean, there's been the Secretary of State away from the G20. Are you of the view that South Africa can report the relationship despite the criticism that's come from this building?
Well, I think both the President and the Secretary of State have made it clear what the problems are and what they have an issue with when it comes to South Africa. The unjust land expropriation law, as well as its growing relationship with countries like Russia and Iran. That's what prompted the serious review of our South Africa policy, which continues to be underway. They have taken also, the South African government, aggressive positions toward the United States and its allies, including accusing Israel, not Hamas, of genocide in the International Court of Justice, and reinvigorating its relationship with Iran to develop commercial, military, and nuclear arrangements. So this isn't one just of demeanor or decorum, however they add into it. This is a matter of a nation that is, we've again made it very clear, taking steps that are not in the best interest of providing a safe, secure, more prosperous America, let alone world, when it comes to the decisions they're making. So all of this is under review, but obviously part of it is, within the diplomacy of it, is to encourage a change in policy and posture. Of course that would be the point. The point is to encourage a change. What I've seen with the trips we've made with the diplomatic adventures, of course, as well as the G7 summit in Canada, is the nature of the Secretary of State is to make things better for people. It is not to punish or to target people or countries. It's the nature of changing policy and creating better environments for all of us. And I've seen that in motion in every dynamic. And that's the case here with South Africa as well. Nadia, yes.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Good to see you. I have a couple of questions. On Yemen first, what is the U.S. strategy regarding Yemen? Is it degrading the capabilities of the Houthis that they don't pose a threat to U.S. interests, or is it destroying them completely? Because there's conflicting statements from U.S. officials saying, like, we're not going to interfere with the civil war in Yemen.
Well, what we've seen, of course, in the past when it comes to the Houthis, it was a tit-for-tat strike. If the Houthis would be sending missiles or attacking both commercial and military ships, what the previous administration did is they would do one strike as a tit-for-tat dynamic. What's happening now is a complete shift when it comes to the nature of why it's going on, which is to stop the assault on the maritime traffic in that area. And up to this point, there's about 174 attacks on American naval ships, which is an extraordinary number of attacks. And this isn't a situation that should be managed. It has to stop. So the message to the Houthis is, if this will end when you end the attack on both commercial and military ships in that region. So it's a maritime issue, and it's meant to completely change the posture of the Houthis, and of course, in a conjunction in that dynamic with Iran. That the days of pinprick responses where we allow that to occur is over. That's, I think, a pretty clear statement from the administration as a whole as well.
On the visa thing, just
the visa,
quickly.
sure.
Is the area clear when it comes to revoking visas for foreign students? Are you revoking visas for students who clearly support Hamas and shows literature that's supporting Hamas, or is it also include students who support Palestine or the free, they say the freedom of the Palestinians, or showing sympathy with civilians in Gaza? Is that area very clear?
Well, what Secretary Rubio has been saying on a number of different interviews is that this is about, when you think about someone applying to come into the country to get a visa, if you were to say everything that he ended up doing as would be his goal upon entering the country, we would never have issued the visa. So you have a dynamic, whereas if there's going to be certain kinds of actions that you're going to undertake, that we don't accept that. Every country has a right to control its borders and to determine who's going to come into the country. So in this particular instance, there's also, I know, a freedom of speech argument. But this is not about speech. It's about actions. It's about things that were done. And of course, I don't want to go further because also this is within a court dynamic. America's got the best court system in the world. And there will be arguments on both sides, no doubt, regarding this. But it has to be argued. It has to be litigated. But the actions that we take and the decisions we make are not about content. It's about actions that are occurring, and certainly in that particular case. Yes.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Can
Hi,
I?
Tammy.
Hi.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the Houthis question, so President Trump said every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon as a shot fired by Iran. So we're wondering, if Houthis don't back down, is the United States prepared to attack Iran or give Israel to do so?
I think you're referring to President Trump's Truth Social tweet, and I'm sure you all have it on your phones. You should, because I'm going to refer you right back to that tweet. It speaks for itself.
Right. Just to follow up on a different topic
Sure.
in that case. So Voice of America and Radio Free Asia is one of the outlets under Voice of America. They have written extensively on the oppression of Uyghur Muslims by Chinese authorities. Actually, their reports have raised awareness about the plight of Uyghurs. And this is a topic that the Secretary feels strongly about as well. We've just seen him last week impose sanctions on Thai officials over deportation of Uyghurs to China.
That's right.
What does he think about the shutdown of this outlet? Does he support this decision?
Well, and what you're referring to, I think, is the VOA and some other outlets involved with the current, some budgetary changes and actions that have been taken. What I can tell you, like, with all the aspects that are happening in this shift, is that it's a fluid situation. And I look forward to watching it unfold, as you do. I know you're all reporters, and some reporters here in the bullpen have been affected. But the fact of the matter is, this is serious business. It's the business of government using taxpayer dollars. So the same standard applies here. And of course, it's just happened. Kari Lake, as essentially the envoy within this framework, is someone that Americans know and trust, and I look forward to seeing how this unfolds. But right now, it's new, it's a fluid situation, and we'll have more for you as it unfolds.
When you say fluid,
right,
could it be overturned, you mean?
Go ahead.
Can I just follow up on Yemen and your assessment of civilian casualties? Because you'll know there have been reports of several. What's your assessment on that?
On civilian casualties? Well, under no situation does anyone want that. This is a horrible dynamic. At the same time, the Houthis are pirates who have commandeered an entire country, in addition to attempting to commandeer and threaten and harass shipping in the maritime area there. So when we think about this dynamic, America seeks to avoid that situation, but we're now in a position where it has become untenable. And that America's position in this kind of a regard, it's an unfortunate framework of war and of tensions and conflict like this. But of course, we lament, I think, this country of all countries, and what we've done and what we've accomplished. We lament the loss of life. That's the aspect. Because I think this is part of the real story. All of the aspects of what the Trump administration, what Secretary Rubio and everyone now in this new administration is focused on, and maybe it surprised people, it shouldn't have, is peace, is to stop the wholesale slaughter of people, is to stop the chaos that reigns through certain regions, is to make sure, especially with certainly Ukraine and Russia, is to make sure in every place where there's conflict that the people that are alive today might be alive tomorrow. And it's imperfect. It's not something that any of us can sometimes predict the end result of. But this is an administration and a president and a Secretary of State who's made it clear that if there is a hallmark, the hallmark is fighting for peace and an end to this kind of chaos that has destroyed Yemenis' lives And it destroys, obviously, too many lives around the world. Now, yes, sir, you've been waiting patiently. Yes, sir.
Two quick questions on the Palestinian issue. One pertaining to Gaza. Aid has not been allowed in since the 2nd of March. The situation is very dire. I was wondering if you are really concerned about this, especially, this coincided with the beginning of Ramadan as well, where people need food and water and so on. I mean, is starvation used as a method to pressure people? Isn't that a war crime of some sort internationally?
Well, for the horrible suffering of the Gazan people, we know where that sits. It sits with Hamas. We know that within the ceasefire, and why we fight for the ceasefire and want it to continue, is in fact to make sure that food and aid is moved into that region. The United States has led the way in that regard. We also know that at this point, when it comes to the nature of what Envoy Witkoff has worked on and what all of us still focus on, is in fact what your concern is. Making sure that there's a situation on the ground that allows food to get to the people who need it, that allows aid to move through to the people who have been suffering because of the choices that Hamas has made throughout the years. And that is what we continue to work on. So everyone, certainly it's a concern, and that is why we continue to work to make sure that aid can get to the people who need it. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Follow up?
Yeah.
The Syrian Interim Authority last Thursday approved a new constitution. It has granted likely no rights for the minority like Kurds and Druze in Syria, and has been rejected by these minorities, labeling it against the democracy. What's the U.S. view on that constitution? And does anyone in this department connected with the new Syrian Interim Authority? Do you have any engagement with them?
Again, when it comes to diplomatic engagements, situations as fluid and as situational like that one, that's not something I'm going to be able to answer. But I'll see what we can do when it comes to the specifics of what you've asked for.
What about the?
Yes. Right.
I have another question on Iraq.
All right.
This administration, including Secretary Rubio himself, has called the Iraqi government to resume the Iraqi Kurdistan oil export and solve the U.S. oil companies' issue that are working in Iraq. But this hasn't happened. What's the U.S. view on that? Are you urging the Iraqi government to resume the oil export?
Again, I'm not, at this press briefing, I'm not going to go into international negotiations or diplomatic negotiations or thoughts that might be held by the Secretary of State. But we'll see when it comes to actions on that. It'll be, I think, abundantly clear. Yes, ma'am.
Syria. Thank you, Tammy. So Syria's new government, along with regional countries such as Turkey, Jordan, Qatar, and others, have been calling on the U.S. to lift the sanctions that was put in place during the Assad regime, and many view these sanctions as a significant barrier to stabilizing and rebuilding the country. Is the administration considering removing or maybe easing these sanctions?
Well, again, when we think about the administration, I think of President Trump and their posture and point of view regarding Syria, and the fact that when it comes to the State Department and the Secretary, these are things that would be negotiations that would have to be contemplated, and I'm not going to do that right here from this podium. Yes, sir.
Thanks so much, Tammy. I appreciate you taking the question. Over the weekend...
Depends on what the question is, but go for it.
Over the weekend, the U.S. deported a Lebanese citizen who was a doctor at Brown University. I was wondering if you might be able to elaborate why.
That, I would say, when it comes to that kind of action on everything we might discuss, that's the Department of Homeland Security. So that would be them.
And on violence, escalating violence in the West Bank, I guess, are there any concerns among at the State Department over what we're seeing in terms of Israeli actions in the north, in Jenin, in Tulkarm?
Well, the United States position, certainly the State Department, is that we stand steadfastly with Israel. Israel has seen certain security concerns that they have, and they're taking actions regarding those security concerns. And we stand with those decisions and what the Israelis choose to do in that framework. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Two questions. Changing subject to South Asia. A few days before the elections, President Trump, then as a candidate, had expressed concern about attacks on the Hindus in Bangladesh. now that Secretary has been here for about 60 days, what is his assessment about the situation of Hindus in Bangladesh and what steps he is taking to address
President Trump?
Secretary Rubio.
Well, again, you're talking about President Trump in certain aspects about how the nation and how his administration views the nature of what's happening in another country. And Secretary Rubio, of course, follows through with his vision and the nature of the choices that are made in that regard. But when it comes to, again, negotiations, diplomatic considerations, and the conversations that those involve and what might happen, I don't want to presume here what the outcome will be. You don't want me to either. I think that the best thing to do would be to.
Question?
I'm sorry?
Can I reframe the question?
Well, because I'm not. What I'm not going to answer is diplomatic considerations from government to government or attitudes and approaches when it comes to what's happening in a certain country that belong within a diplomatic kind of conversation that clearly I can't speak on, or would I hypothesize about what might happen. So, yes. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I have one more
Go ahead.
question.
Thank you, Tony. Just to follow up quickly on what Hamara was saying about USAGM, Radio Free Asia, and other news broadcasters, because I think you're going to get a lot of questions about this.
Oh, I expect it. I just got back into the country over the weekend. I thought, well, this will be discussed.
As you mentioned, it's affected colleagues we know in the bullpen.
Yes.
Can you just clarify when you say that you're watching this unfold? Do you know if this is something that could be reversed in terms of what they're doing with USAGM?
You want me to speculate.
No,
and I know you know I can't. And I know I come from a background where that's mostly what I did for a very long time. That I can't do here.
Hang on, I got to just get that music off. We're about to start the Pentagon briefing, so I'll go to the Pentagon briefing when it starts.
By the New Republic, terminated a contract to the Yale School of Public Health's Humanitarian Research Lab. They were tracking evidence of Ukrainian children that have been abducted by Russia since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Some of that evidence was about to be, from their work, it was about to be transferred to European law enforcement officials. Can you comment at all on whether it is true that this grant was terminated, and whether you have any other comment on that?
Well, I can't confirm that. But obviously, I'll take it back, and I'll get back to you so we can get some details in that regard. Yes, sir.
So I also have a question on Russia, Ukraine. But before that, let me follow up on Radio Free Europe quickly from different angle. This administration last month secured one of the reporters jailed in Belarus, was working for Radio Free Europe, and I want to give you credit for that. Now, given how strongly you feel about their cases, can you assure us that you will continue securing the release of Radio Free Europe reporters, one of them in Azerbaijan and other countries, even if you end up defunding them?
Well, that's not something I can answer here, again, when it comes to the nature of the choices that will be made. But what I can tell you is that this is a country that has led the way from the very start of radio, of making sure that voices are heard everywhere. That this is something this country can be proud of. And it sits within the framework of what matters to us. At the same time, this nation has to look, and I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of, look to the nature of how America is going to be able to remain strong and safe and secure and more prosperous so that we can continue to move through with foreign aid, with facilitating voices that normally other parts of the world would not hear. It is a part of democracy. And of course, you want every nation to have that kind of commitment as well when it comes to who's able to be heard. So that's a commitment that stands. It is the heart of this nation. And certainly that's not going to be ending. The framework of certain things might change, or how we facilitate them, but certainly not that commitment. And I think we've done a good job of that, and we should all be proud of it as well.
My second question, Tammy, on Russia-Ukraine, I was going actually. That was my original question.
Well, I've clearly lost the bucket of issues here as we've gone from a few things back. But go ahead.
Comment on reports that the United States pulled back from international group investigating Russian crimes. What is the strategy there, and what message are you sending to Russia, who continues actually committing crimes as we speak? Look,
this is we're going to be looking into a number of different things. If that's anecdotal, the nature, I'm not familiar with the nature of what happened, so I'm not going to be able to speak to that. Yes, right down the middle here. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
I think, yeah, the gentleman in front of you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Tommy. Daniele Compatangelo for LA7, Italian TV and primetime media. So we both were at the G7 the last week.
Yes, we were.
And the focus was Ukraine. So today in Europe there was European Council. They met the foreign minister and they discussed about Ukraine and the European Union proposals. So it seems like there are Europe is very divided right now. Like Italy, Spain, Ukraine. Hungary and Slovakia are more aligned to Trump proposal. It's not proposal, but like plan. And the other ones, more lefties, are like want to keep giving aids, military aids to Ukraine. So, what do you, as a State Department, how do you guys will interact with the European right now? Are we going to go for the Trump plans or the European ones?
I think we're going to go with the Marco Rubio approach, which is to talk to everybody, which is to put out the new ideas, which is to argue for them on the merits of those ideas. That's what happened at the G7. What happened at the G7 was a collection of people who have very different points of view, some big disagreements, but a direct, specific decision mentioned by the Canadian Foreign Minister Joly that we're going to focus on what we do have in common, what we can get done together, and really the importance of the gathering itself and what we can do together. There's a lot of people, I think, that would prefer us to be distracted by the disagreements. But what I've seen Secretary Rubio accomplish is remarkable, and in different environments where there's negotiations between countries attempting to stop war, a ministers' meeting where they're all aligned in some fashion or another and want to work together but have disagreements. I can say this, fortunately, having been there, is that it's been his voice, and I'm proud as an American that it happens to be the American Secretary of State. It's his voice that has brought conversations together, that has brought groups of people together. And we know this is why you need a State Department and why you need diplomats, because everybody's going to have different ideas. Everybody's going to think there's a better way, and we all have investments in the nature of the outcome. America is the strongest country in the world for a reason. All the combination of things we do, but mostly because we are a nation of merit and arguments and speech and the ability for people to be heard and for all of us to have an open mind. That is what Marco Rubio brings to this debate, especially in Europe where there are disagreements. We will, and he expects to, win people over based on the merits of the arguments that we continue to make every day. And I'm going to leave it there, everyone. I'll see you Wednesday and Friday this week if you didn't get enough. There'll be more to talk about. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Okay, so that's the State Department briefing. All right, hang on. We're going to go to the Pentagon briefing. It's just about to get started. Pentagon briefing. Oh, my gosh. Look at this. One after the other today. All right, I have to fix this and this. Again, that was the State Department briefing. So this is the Pentagon briefing. It's supposed to start right now. Any moment now. Put this here. And then I got to fix the headline. Any moment, Pentagon press briefing. By the way, quick thanks to for your support, Crazy Yoda. Thanks Sean for being a member. Thanks Crazy Yoda for the memberships. Thanks Heavenly Intervention for your support. Robert S. Jordan and the Ringa X. Thank you. Robert S. Jordan had heard that the Ringa had heard that the USS Truman is in the Red Sea. Is that true? I mean, definitely it's in the area. I have to look up. Maybe they did say that. I am not sure. I don't. Did they say where it is right now? I don't know. That's what the Ring says. But it's definitely in the region, leading the response to the Houthis that President Trump has ordered. Which I'm sure will be asked about in this briefing. Let's see here. It's possible that we will have, I don't know if the White House is going to cover it. It's possible the White House will have video of President Trump at the Kennedy Center. If they do, we will show you that. But I don't know right now if that's happening. I mean, he's going to be there, but I don't know if they'll have coverage of it. So if I get video of that, I will play it for you. Yeah, it's an interesting day. It's the way it worked out today. This normally doesn't work out like this, but we had a White House press briefing at 1. We had a State Department press briefing at 2, and this is starting any moment now. So it just worked out that they're one right after the other. So we could show everyone. How are the markets doing? I have to just pull it up here for a second. Dow was up 1.25%, S&P 500 up 1.13%, NASDAQ up about 1%. So they're up a bit right now. Hang on a moment here. One moment. PW360 sent me a link about the news outlet Semaphore is reporting that Trump weighs recognizing Crimea as Russian territory in bid to end war. Crimea is part of Ukraine that Russia took over in, I think it was 2014. So Semaphore is reporting that. I'm guessing we'll have a bunch of questions about the military action against the Houthis. Also, President Trump's threats against Iran this morning in this upcoming news briefing. If you didn't see it, here's what President Trump said about Iran earlier. Hang on, I'll throw it on the screen. President Trump earlier today said, "Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that that force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they've lost control, but they haven't lost control. They're dictating every move, giving them the weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible, suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire." Tim King thinks Trump wants war. So that's what President Trump had to say today. I would certainly not be surprised if there are more Houthi attacks on U.S. interests in the Middle East, or like the ships, or if the Houthis continue to attack shipping in the Red Sea. Will President Trump take action against Iran in response to that? We'll have to see. Evelyn in Maine says, for sure. Ali says, I'm sure there will be. Any moment now, Pentagon press briefing. Triple briefing coverage today. If you missed it, we showed the White House press briefing earlier. We also showed the State Department press briefing. Also, I would not at all be surprised about getting questions about the situation in Ukraine. Rachel says, I kind of think the Houthi attacks may slow down a little bit. I guess time will tell. The Houthis, during the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, stopped their attacks, but a couple weeks ago said they were going to resume their attacks. They said Israel was not letting aid into Gaza, and they were going to resume their attacks. But I don't think they've actually resumed their attacks yet on ships, on merchant ships going through the Red Sea. Thank you, Inked Patriot, for your support, who says, I stand by Israel. Thank you so much, Inked Patriot. According to Houthi media, in the last couple of hours, there have been more U.S. strikes in Yemen on Houthi targets. Oh, by the way, they also reported hold on. What is this? Actually, I'm not sure about that. Thank you also, Dodger Blue, for your support. Thank you, Dodger Blue. Thanks to all of our moderators who have been here. I really appreciate you being here for our coverage today. Beth Mythical, Ruth Krafasi over there on YouTube. Thank you, Cynthia Moon. On Twitch, we have Big Ball of Yarn, Good Luck Duck, Idaho Star, Matthew Kohai 3, Mick Bridges, and Surly Dev. Thank you. By the way, the White House pool reports President Trump has arrived at the Kennedy Center. His motorcade arrived there 7 minutes ago. Thanks to Kay Lowry, Body, Margaret Riley, Paul Anderson, Charlotte Webb over there on Facebook. Thanks for moderating. Linda Bell, Larry, Misha on X. Still waiting to see if the White House is going to carry any of President Trump at the Kennedy Center. If they do, we will have some video of that for you. Messam Abbas says, any news about Pakistan? I haven't seen any today. I'm sure there is news in Pakistan. I haven't seen any big headlines here in the U.S. about it. Thank you, John Q. Public, watching on X. The official start time of this was 2:45, but they're not live yet. I'm guessing a lot of this is going to be involved the Houthi stuff, asking about the military attacks on the Houthis. I don't know if we'll get much information. Where is, give me one moment here. Where is, why can't I find this? There we go. No, this will be live. This will be live. Gunny B64 G Bunny 64 G Bunny says, doubt we will get much information. I don't believe there have been many Pentagon briefings during this administration so far. I mean, you heard Tammy Bruce in the State Department briefing said she hadn't been there for 10 days. She hadn't given a briefing for 10 days. I think she said that. Oh, here we go. Here we go right now. Oops. Hold on. I messed it up, but I'll get it back for you. Here it is.
Let me see. Here, you want to check this out? Already off to this is a live production. All right. So thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope everybody had a really great weekend. I wanted to say welcome to the new Pentagon press briefing room. In line with the Secretary's vision to make this the most transparent Department of Defense in history, I gave you my personal commitment to make these briefings more routine. So today is the first of many, and considering the significant U.S. military operations as directed by the President this weekend, now seemed as appropriate time as any to fulfill that obligation to all of you. Additionally, I'm glad to be joined by Lieutenant General Alex Grinkovich, affectionately known as Grinch. Now, despite his call sign, he's actually a very pleasant and delightful human being, and we're glad to have him here at this podium. He's the Director of Operations of the Joint Staff. He's going to be able to provide a much richer context on the ongoing series of U.S. military operations against the Iranian-backed Houthi terrorists in Yemen. So thank you for joining me, General.
Thank you, sir.
As many of you all know, we had an election back in November, and as a result of that election, an overwhelming mandate from the American people, there's a new president in the White House, and that, of course, is our president, President Donald Trump, who has immediately gotten to work on his America First agenda for the Department of Defense. Among those are 4 top-line points that I think are very important for those in this room to understand. Those are protecting the U.S. homeland, deterring China, and maintaining the ability to strike America's enemies anywhere in the world, and then also asking our allies to do more. We all know that this is a tall task, to be sure. So President Trump knew we needed a certain type of leader to bring the department into the 21st century, and he found that leader in now Secretary Pete Hegseth. So in less than 2 months, Secretary Hegseth has taken monumental steps to return the Department of Defense to its core mission, which is warfighting, lethality, meritocracy. In a very, very short amount of time, Secretary Hegseth has restored the warrior ethos. He's declared DEI dead at the DoD. He's made the sovereignty of our borders a matter of national security. And we are refocused on training, fitness, and high standards across the board here in the Department of Defense. So before we get into our updates today, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that this Department of Defense is committed to achieving our mission of maintaining the greatest fighting force the world has ever known, and returning the Department of Defense back to the American warfighter and making it more transparent to the American taxpayer. So starting out, as I'm sure you've all seen over the weekend, U.S. Central Command Forces initiated a series of operations consisting of precision strikes against Iran-backed Houthi targets across Yemen to restore freedom of navigation and reestablish American deterrence. For years, the Houthis have targeted U.S. military ships and aircraft. They've hit commercial ships as well, including U.S. flagged vessels, and they threaten our personnel overseas. Houthi terrorists have launched missiles, one-way attack drones at U.S. warships over 170 times, and at commercial vessels 145 times since 2003. I know what it's like to be in a situation when you're under fire by the enemy. Your life is at risk. The life of your friends and your battle buddies is at risk, and you're prohibited from returning fire. That's a hellish situation that I wouldn't wish on my worst adversary. It's a tough position that we put America's sons and daughters in. Under President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's leadership, we will defend our sons and daughters. If you shoot at American troops, there will be consequences. As President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made clear, these actions by the Houthis will not be tolerated. In his first 2 days back at the White House, President Trump signed an order laying out a process to redesignate the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization after the previous administration revoked their designation within weeks of taking office. Under the previous administration, America's enemies were emboldened and billions in frozen funds were unlocked for Iran. With President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's leadership, an era of peace through strength is back. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. With that said, and this is a very important point, this is also not an endless offensive. This is not about regime change in the Middle East. This is about putting American interests first. As I said over the weekend, there is a very clear end state to this operation. And that begins the moment that the Houthis pledge to stop attacking our ships and putting American lives at risk. Shifting focus to Africa, at the request of the federal government of Somalia, U.S. Africa Command Forces conducted collective self-defense airstrikes against al-Shabaab on March 15th. The airstrikes occurred about 150 kilometers northeast of Mogadishu, Somalia, and AFRICOM's initial assessment is that enemy combatants were killed and that no civilians were injured or killed. And so U.S. forces will continue to partner with Somali armed forces to take the fight to these terrorists and degrade their ability to plan and conduct attacks that threaten the U.S. homeland, our forces, and civilians abroad. Now on to Homeland Defense. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have been very, very clear that border security is national security. We spent decades defending foreign nations' borders while our own U.S. borders has been invaded by criminal illegal aliens, human smugglers, drug traffickers, and transnational gangs. The Department of Defense is proud to defend our homeland and the territorial sovereignty of the United States. Although we've seen a 93% decrease in illegal border crossings, we will not stop until we have 100% operational control of our southern border. And over the weekend, Joint Task Force Southern Border assumed the mission from Joint Task Force North and reached initial operating capacity. Additionally, U.S. Northern Command announced on Saturday that the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, the USS Gravely, departed Naval Weapons Station Yorktown for a scheduled deployment to the Gulf of America. We're actually making some history from the podium today. It's the first time we've recognized the Gulf of America in the Pentagon press briefing room, which is kind of cool. So it's not only vital for the United States to have control of our border via land, it's equally important to control our territorial waters. And this deployment directly supports U.S. Northern Command's mission to protect our sovereignty. And lastly, Secretary Hegseth spoke with Qatari Minister of State for Defense Affairs, His Excellency Sheikh Saud Al Thani, to discuss operations to eliminate the Houthi threat to American commerce and restore American freedom of navigation. The Secretary acknowledged Qatar's strong partnership in addressing shared security challenges across the region, including Syria and the Red Sea. And with that, I'll turn it over to my counterpart, Grinch, for some more opening comments on CENTCOM strikes. General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity to provide you a brief operational update on our operations against the Houthis. On Saturday, the 15th of March, shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern Time, at the direction of the President, U.S. Central Command began precision strike operations against the Houthis to restore freedom of navigation and American deterrence. The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities. These included terrorist training sites, unmanned aerial vehicle infrastructure, weapons manufacturing capabilities, and weapons storage facilities. It also included a number of command and control centers, including a terrorist compound where we know several senior Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle experts were located. On Sunday, strike operations continued against additional headquarters locations, weapons storage facilities, as well as detection capabilities that have been used to threaten maritime shipping in the past. Today, the operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the President's objectives. Thanks, and I look forward to your questions.
And with that, in this very crowded briefing room, I'll take some of your questions. And the first, I'll go to Logan from Newsmax.
Sean, thank you for taking my question. This really is for both of you. A question about the Bashat. That's Iran's spy ship that has been directing the Houthis throughout this conflict. Is it still operating in support of the Houthis? If so, do you know where it is?
General, turn it over to you to address that.
Sure. We know that the Iranians have provided a variety of assistance to the Houthis over the years, including some suspected intelligence. We do know that some had previously come from the Bashat. The Bashat is not currently being used for those operations, but we do know that other vessels are contemplated for those sorts of operations, so we're watching very closely to see if they return to the AO.
I would also say that, when you look at how the previous administration conducted business with Iran, they really empowered Iran to fund and export terror all around the world, whether it's with Hezbollah, Hamas, specifically with the Houthis. I mean, it's very clear. I think President Trump has made it very clear that he's put Iran on notice. I mean, I'm sure that you saw his tweet today that essentially saying, and I'm paraphrasing, that any shot fired at U.S. forces by the Houthis would be considered a shot from Iran. And this is the president showcasing leadership from the Oval Office and frankly, bringing moral clarity back to the United States of America. We know who the enemies of this country are and the enemies of a free world are. And President Trump has put them on notice, as you saw with Iran this morning. But okay. Gabby.
Thank you for taking my question. I wanted to run back to TDA and MS-13 deportations to El Salvador's Terrorism Confinement Center. Do we anticipate to renew that partnership as it will conclude after 1 year? If yes, what does that look like from a cost perspective? And how is Guantanamo Bay factored into dealing with criminal aliens and terrorists, considering this new Pentagon is more focused on securing the border?
Well, that's a great question. So I think part of your question about El Salvador should be referred to the State Department. But I'll say that the Department of Defense is proud to defend our homeland and our sovereignty in helping to deport transnational criminal organizations like Tren de Agua. We're proud to support that mission. I don't know, General, do you have anything to offer about Guantanamo Bay and our force posture there?
Sure. I just had a couple of things for you, Gabby. We do continue to have a substantial presence at Guantanamo Bay to ensure that we're ready to receive any illegal aliens that the Department of Homeland Security would like to send there. We're monitoring their requirements closely, and we're in daily contact with them to make sure that we can meet them to the best of our ability.
Tom?
Sean, if the Iranian ships are operational, start helping the Houthis, will they be targeted? And for the general, any sense of number of military casualties so far and any civilian casualties in Yemen?
Well, that's a great question, General. If you'll permit me to answer.
Sure, go ahead.
So I think that I certainly don't want to get out in front of the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary as it pertains to clearance of strikes and who will be targeted. But I think the president's made very clear that all options are on the table.
Yeah, Tom, just on your question of casualties, military casualties, we have some initial estimates. I hesitate to say what they are because they're very much estimates at this point, but I think in terms of dozens might be a safe overall characterization.
Dozens of military?
Yeah, dozens of military casualties so far, but I really can't characterize it much better than that at this point. We'll learn more as we go. On the civilian casualty side, no indications of any civilian casualties. We, of course, have seen some of the accusations by the Houthis. We look at those closely when they do come in, but we have no credible indications of any civilian casualties.
You know, and I'd like to add to what General Grinch said. Anytime you're close to an operation like this, having been, in combat front towards enemy before, the fog of war is a real thing. So before we announce something here from the podium, we're going to make sure that we get it right. And I think part of that is just taking the time to evaluate and doing a proper battle damage, BDA battle damage assessment, sensitive site exploitation. And frankly, that stuff just takes time. And so before we make any sort of those announcements, we're going to do a real hard look and make sure that we get it right before we announce it to you. Charlie from CBS.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Changing the subject slightly. Is the DoD considering rescheduling the performance of young musicians in the Marine Band that was canceled because of the anti-DEI executive order? And in a broader sense, is there a concern that anti-DEI initiatives may have a negative impact on recruitment?
Well, I think the president and the secretary have been very clear on this, that anybody that says in the Department of Defense that diversity is our strength is frankly incorrect. Our shared purpose and unity are our strength. And I say this as somebody who led a combat platoon in Afghanistan that was probably the most diverse platoon that you could possibly imagine. I mean, we had blacks serving next to white, Christians serving next to atheists, Northerners next to Southerners, and yes, Democrats and Republicans in the very same foxhole. But the reason why we were so lethal in Afghanistan, and again, my platoon took an 85% casualty rate over 485 days, but part of the reason why we were able to accomplish the mission and the commander's intent was because we put aside our many differences as Americans. There were no hyphenated Americans with us in that isolated hilltop in the border region of Afghanistan. We were all just Americans. And really, when you talk about America's greatest strength, yes, we've got, I'm sure the general can attest, yes, we've got lots of cool, sexy equipment and lots of exceptional military training. I think it helps set us apart from everybody else. But what makes us exceptional fighters on the battlefield is our ability to put aside our many differences and unite under a common banner as Americans. I mean, for goodness sake, when we put aside our many differences as Americans, we went to the moon with less technology than many of you all have in your pockets and your cell phones right now. We're talking about a force that stormed the beaches of Normandy, scaled the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc, fought through hedgerows and beat back the Nazi war machine and saved the world when we put aside our many differences as Americans. And I know President Trump understands that our focus on unity and shared purpose is what makes us lethal, and so does Secretary Hegseth. So their guidance has been clear on this, and we're going to continue to focus on that guidance.
In terms of the concert, are you thinking about rescheduling that?
I don't think I'll have to take that question for you. I don't have an answer for you, but we'll get back to you on that. Oh, let's go to the phones. I'm getting a signal. We should go to the phones. Okay, we got JJ Green on the line from WTOP.
Hey, Sean, thank you for doing this. A question about Ukraine. Can you assess how the U.S. military, assess the status of U.S. military aid to Ukraine and the intelligence sharing, how that's going since it was disrupted maybe a week or so ago, and then restarted? What's being shared? What's being given? What's happening with that?
Well, I can tell you that U.S. military aid to Ukraine has been turned back on, as well as intelligence sharing with our Ukrainian partners. But I'll tell you this. The president has been very clear since his time on the campaign trail that his focus with the war in Ukraine is bringing about peace and putting a distinct focus on peace and really to stop the dying. And so President Trump, along with his national security team, have been heavily involved in, along with Secretary Hegseth as well, heavily involved with Ukraine and Russia to try to broker that peace, understanding that there will likely be difficult conversations to be had on both sides when you're talking about, the release of hostages, when you're talking about potential ceasefire agreements, when you're talking about territory. As someone who's negotiated with some tough people on the battlefield, I can tell you it's a tough, imperfect, nuanced, and complicated process. And President Trump and Secretary Hegseth certainly understand that, with on the forefront of their mind peace as their first and foremost priority. General, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just echo what you said, sir, which is, the status of U.S. military aid, it has been turned back on. We've got confirmed reports that it is continuing or is flowing back into Ukraine. And, of course, daily reports on the outcome of the intelligence sharing and those efforts. So all of that is as it was previously.
So I'm going to stick with the phones here just a second. I got Christina from Breitbart on the phones. Do I understand that?
Yes, thanks so much for doing that, Sean. Two questions. After U.S. strikes against the Houthis on Saturday, the Houthis fired drones and missiles at the Truman. Will there be a response to those attacks? And secondly, the Pentagon has deployed the USS Gravely. Can you tell us a little bit about what it will be doing there, exactly what its mission will be?
So I guess I'll address the first part of your question first, Christina, and now, General, I'll let you chime in. The question of the Houthis. I mean, remind me what the first part of your question was, Christina?
Will there be a response to the Houthi attacks on the Truman?
It was that. I got you. So first of all, we did get reports of the Houthis firing ballistic missiles and some one-way attack drones against U.S. forces in the region. Those attacks were largely ineffective and didn't come anywhere near U.S. forces in the region. Again, the commanders in command of those vessels were, they were completely on point with regards to defending. They were not effective attacks. And so I would also say the second part, the answer to the second part of that question is that the response is ongoing. I mean, this isn't, there's going to be, as I mentioned, a very clear end state to this. And I think a lot of that has to do with how the Houthis respond. Firing at U.S. military personnel in the region and shooting at our ships and shooting at our drones and putting American lives at risk is not a good way to end this conflict. The Houthis could stop this tomorrow if they said, we're going to stop shooting at your people. But they've clearly chosen not to do that. And so this campaign will be relentless to degrade their capability and to open up shipping lanes in the region and to defend our homeland. But General,
thanks, Sean. The only thing I would add is, the Houthis claim to have tried to attack the Harry S. Truman. Quite frankly, it's hard to tell because while we're executing precision strikes, they missed by over 100 miles. So I would just tell you their effectiveness, I would question anything that they claim in the press that they're doing or not doing. It's very hard to tell what they are just based on their level of incompetence that they've demonstrated so far.
Sorry, the missile missed by 100 miles?
Yes, that's correct. There's also been a number of other attempts to interdict vessels in the Red Sea using UAVs and some cruise missiles as well. All of those have been easily defeated by our fighter aircraft that are there.
General Grinch throwing shade at the Houthis from the podium. I love it.
I had some of the folks in here know that my previous job I dealt with the Houthis quite a bit.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Happy to throw shade at them. On the question about the USS Gravely that you had, Christina, so she's deploying under General Guillot, the commander of U.S. Northern Command's authorities for maritime homeland defense missions. She'll go down, as Sean mentioned, into the Gulf of America and surrounding areas and be involved in the interdiction mission for any of the drugs and whatnot that are heading in. It'll be partnered very closely with the United States Coast Guard. So we won't share, of course, her actual scheme of maneuver here, but know that that's the mission that she's going down there for, and we look forward to seeing what she can do.
And on that point about the USS Gravely, I think it's really important that, the President and the Secretary have made very clear 100% operational control of our southern border. I mean, we've got probably close to 10,000 troops on our southern border. We're surging a Stryker Brigade combat team down there to reinforce the land border as well. But there's a sea component to this as well, and that's part of the mission of the USS Gravely is to secure the water routes in defense of our southern border. And so, Aaron, Daily Caller.
Thank you, Sean. Will the Department of Defense commit to firing or otherwise disciplining any remaining leadership that were directly involved in the Afghanistan withdrawal?
So we're in the process of figuring out what that investigation will look like. But I'll tell you, as somebody who served in Afghanistan and watched that unfold, I mean, I was horrified in a lot of ways. You know, you think about how much time and blood and treasure and American life that was lost in Afghanistan over 20 years. You think about that for a second. You know, I'm 43 years old. This country was at war in Afghanistan for 20 years. So almost half of my life, this country was at war in Afghanistan. And I personally watched, you know, the men in my platoon, but also my larger brigade combat team, which was a part of the 10th Mountain Division, 3rd Brigade. We bled the ground red in Afghanistan. And I watched my men do extraordinary things in support of a grateful nation and in support of the mission there. And to watch Afghanistan be surrendered in the way that it was extremely difficult. And I think something that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth really understand is that when America makes a decision to get involved in any conflict, we have a moral obligation to have a clear-cut end state to what that operation looks like, a clear exit strategy to what that operation looks like, and to make sure that victory is clearly defined. And I think in Iraq and certainly in Afghanistan over the last 20-some years, I think maybe we've struggled a little bit with those finer points. But I'll say that the President Trump and Secretary Hegseth, they understand that when America gets involved in a fight, it's our job to also end that fight as fast as humanly possible because we have a moral obligation to win and win decisively. Otherwise, you're going to have an entire generation of American warriors wondering what the hell it was all for. And I know that every day I wake up and I draw breath, I think about the men who I served with, who were my friends, who never came home from that fight. I've lost 30 friends in my support of the Afghan war, 30. And you ask yourself, you look yourself in the mirror, you ask yourself, what do we have to show for it? Not a whole lot. And so to your question of will people be held accountable? I think we have an obligation both to the American people and to the American warfighters who fought in Afghanistan to hold the leadership accountable in some way. Now, we don't know what that looks like right now, but to hold the leadership that was in charge of the Afghan withdrawal accountable. Because look, if you have a private that loses a sensitive item, that loses night vision goggles, that loses a weapon, you can bet that private is going to be held accountable. The same and equal standards must apply to senior military leaders. So
I just want to follow up on what you just said.
Sure.
You said that there needs to be a clear end state. And I know the goal is to have the Houthis stop their attacks, but what is the end state? What happens if the Houthis don't stop their attacks or don't agree to say they'll stop their attacks? It doesn't seem like there is a clear end state, that this could just go on and on.
Well, in fairness, I mean, it's a great question, but in fairness, the operation's only been going on for 48 hours. And the President and Secretary have been very clear on this, that the Houthis can determine when this ends. And until then, the campaign will be unrelenting until we, one, protect our homeland, and two, open up the shipping lanes there, so make sure that we have freedom of maneuver in that area. General, you have something that...
I mean, what I might add is, while we won't talk about it publicly, just know that there is a design to the operation. There are specific effects that we're trying to achieve, and there are specific targets that have been selected and approaches that we're taking in order to achieve the president's end state. So it isn't that we're just striking capabilities. There's an intent behind every strike and every target that we go after.
To that point, you mentioned that this is not like it was before. So what is different about the targeting that you're doing this time that wasn't true under the Biden administration?
Yeah, I give the short answer to that, and again, without going into too many operational details for security reasons, but it's a much broader set of targets that we've been able to action in this case. And the other key differences are the delegation of authorities from the President through Secretary Hegseth down to the operational commander. So that allows us to achieve a tempo of operations where we can react to opportunities that we see on the battlefield in order to continue to put pressure on the Houthis.
Thank you very much. Will this operation include sending ground troops into Yemen? If so, how do you achieve your objective of making them say enough without sending ground troops?
Well, I'll tell you, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for us to talk about force posture from this podium because as a commander who's been on the battlefield, it's very, very important to keep the enemy guessing, keep your adversaries guessing. Now, that's not to say that we've got ground troops in Yemen. That's not to say that we're sending ground troops in, but it's difficult to talk about that stuff for operational security reasons from the podium. But generally, you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add to that. Okay. I think that's exactly right.
Sean, can I follow up on that? You said that one of the things that you were waiting to do for the BDA was sensitive site exploitation. Does that include U.S. boots on the ground or any kind of American personnel on the ground to do that?
I can't talk about that stuff from the podium, but we have ways of conducting sensitive site exploitations without ground troops on the ground.
Yeah, it does not always require boots on the ground, and I'll just leave it at that.
So can I also ask you about if there's any U.S. military assessment? I know that you're still on, the BDA is ongoing, but is there any military assessment about how much of the Houthis' capabilities were degraded by these first couple of rounds? And can you say anything? The President's Truth Social mentioned going after leaders, which seems to be one of the things that's different here. Can you say anything about any of the leaders that were targeted here?
Yeah, on the second part of the question, I'll just go to my opening statement where I mentioned that there was a unmanned aerial vehicle facility that was struck with several key leaders. Those were key individuals who led their unmanned aerial vehicle enterprise and were some of the technical experts in there. So think those types of individuals that we might be targeting as part of the command and control.
And so we have destroyed command and control facilities, weapons manufacturing facilities, and advanced weapons storage locations. But again, this campaign is ongoing. It's difficult to talk about all this stuff from the podium, and we're not going to say anything from the podium until we're 100% sure that we have it right. I got time for one more question.
You mentioned the President's Truth Social. Is the U.S. military considering military options for Iran?
I don't want to get out in front of the President or the Secretary, but clearly, I mean, I think the President's Truth Social was pretty clear, and I think the meaning is right there for everybody. I mean, I think everybody understands what he means. I don't want to get out in front of the President, but all options are on the table at this time. And that's all I got.
Quick clarification for General. You said 30 targets. Is that over all 3 days?
No, that was on the first day. And it was over 30 targets, so not a specific number for you, but over 30 targets, multiple locations, and then additional targets today and additional targets yesterday on Sunday and additional targets today that obviously I won't go into because they're executing now.
So thank you, everybody. Listen, we're done. There will be more of these, I promise, but thank you. It was a great first press briefing. Really appreciate you all and your commitment to telling the story of the warfighters, but thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Right, that was the Pentagon press briefing. A bunch of questions about the Houthis. And we'll see what happens. They say that the Houthis can stop this military operation against them by the U.S. if they stop, attacking the shipping and attacking U.S. forces. Will they stop? We're going to ask a little poll question here. Will the my poll? We haven't done a poll yet today. Here's the poll. Will the U.S. strikes stop Houthis from attacking shipping? Red Sea shipping. Hotomek says they don't plan on stopping. Well, I'm asking this in the chat right now. All right, I just posted it on YouTube. Now I'm posting it on Twitch, and I will show you what you guys say. All right, I am just about to post it on Twitch. And that was the first Pentagon press briefing of the new Trump term, by the way. Let me just, I'm glad we got to cover it. Sorry, I don't have video of President Trump from the Kennedy Center. I just don't have, I don't have the rights to that video. The White House didn't show it. Okay, I'm posting it on Facebook right now. Hold on. Okay. Press briefings. If you want to see any of them, you can just rewind. We covered all three of them. The timing worked out pretty well. I don't know that we've ever covered all three of those briefings before. Okay, so I asked you guys, I said, will the U.S., just started a couple days ago, will the U.S. Strikes that President Trump ordered on the Houthis stop them from attacking Red Sea shipping? Over there on, hold on a moment here. Let me show you what you guys had to say. Oops. Get rid of that. What am I getting? What is still on there? Something is still on the screen. Oh, I know what's still on the screen. On YouTube, 65% of you say no. 65% on YouTube say the strikes will not stop the Houthis from attacking the Red Sea shipping. Then what happens? So 60. All right. So that's, and then over there on Facebook, 78% say no on Facebook, and on Twitch, what does Twitch say? 80% say no on Twitch. So you guys are overall pretty pessimistic about the White House, the American military effort, against the Houthis, stopping them from attacking shipping. Crazy Yoda says terrorists never learn. By the way, thanks so much to Crazy Yoda for the, I think you gave memberships. Thank you, Crazy Yoda. Also, thanks to Fred Flintstone for the gift memberships. Inked Patriot for your support. Eamon O'Leary, thanks so much, Eamon, for your support. Natasha, thanks for your support. And JRW fan, thank you. And Chris the Toffee, our member. Thank you so much, Chris the Toffee. Paul S. says fanatics don't give up easily. Oopsie, sorry. The Sugaro says terrorists terrorized so and got nothing more to do. I do wonder, though, remember that the Houthis temporarily stopped the attacks on shipping. These attacks are being done in solidarity, they say, with the Palestinians in Gaza. They started shortly after the Gaza war started, after Israel started attacking Hamas, after Hamas attacked Israel. So if there was some sort of lasting ceasefire in Gaza, would they just stop their attacks then? Because that's the ostensible reason for the attacks. Per Holstrand says, why wouldn't it stop them? Depends on how lethal. Gary thinks Trump wants war. Desert Fox thinks if there was a lasting ceasefire in Gaza, it would stop the Houthis would stop their attacks. Kelly McAlien says, I suspect that Israel and the U.S. are planning something big for Iran. All right, thanks for voting in the poll, by the way. And give me one moment here. Oh, thanks to Keith Lewis, I remember, who thinks Iran is the main problem. Keith thinks Iran controls the Houthis. Baby Duck 5 says there will never be an end to any of it as long as the snake still runs the show in Iran. Drenched Wildfire says, it is so, where is it here? Drenched Wildfire on Twitch said, where'd the comment go? It flew by. It's so great that Trump is so anti-war and will do everything he can to not cause violence, right? Question mark, question mark. Some Facebook people are saying the poll didn't pop up for long on Facebook. I don't know. There might be a Facebook issue with the polls. I mean, I had it on my end. It said it was up there for a while. So I'm sorry on Facebook if you guys didn't see it for very long. Facebook can act kind of weird sometimes. They make it like hard to post polls too. Christy Claff thinks Trump wants to declare martial law. Tony Neem says, anyone remember the USS Cole back in 2000? Yemen did that. All this stuff is nothing new. Let me just see if I have any news updates here. According to Sam Stein, President Trump said at the Kennedy Center that Les Mis will come to the Kennedy Center. I'll take a few more comments here. Jeremy Thompson says this war will never end, and yes, it is a war. John Miller says it just seems it's the same old blank on and never ending. Skull Mopar sent me something from Amakai Stein that said a reporter from I-24 Israeli News in English said that, what is the report? According to Amakai Stein says, according to another reporter, Israel has identified an unusual event that may indicate Hamas attempts to prepare for a raid. Yeah, so I've seen these different reports, some reports today claiming that like Hamas might be preparing for Israel to invade again. Look, we don't know what's going to happen. There's been this ceasefire. Phase 1 of the ceasefire has happened in Gaza, between Israel and Hamas. They exchanged, Hamas gave back a number of hostages. Israel gave back, in exchange, hundreds of prisoners. But phase 1 is over. And there's supposed to be negotiations towards phase 2, which would include a permanent, I believe, withdrawal of Israel from Gaza. But Hamas and Israel are not agreeing on, have not agreed on what phase 2 will look like. For example, what role, if any, Hamas will still have in Gaza and what happens to Hamas. So there's this question as to whether there will even be a phase 2 of the ceasefire or whether the war will continue. Will Israel send more troops, and start start conducting large-scale offensive operations in Gaza again against Hamas? We don't know. So we'll have to see what happens on that. I was trying to get you a little update on that situation. Here is the, hang on a second here. Now here's, this is something from a few days ago. I don't think this happened yet. This is from AP. Hamas said on Friday it had accepted a proposal from mediators to release one living American-Israeli hostage and the bodies of 4 dual nationals who died in captivity in Gaza. Their group the offer appears aimed at keeping up momentum on negotiations over the future of the Gaza ceasefire and the release of all Israeli hostages, living and dead. Talks are continuing in Qatar, but there are no signs of a breakthrough. The war has been paused for almost a month by the fragile ceasefire, although Israel has cut off all food, medicine, and electricity for Gaza as a pressure tactic against Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office cast doubt on Hamas's latest offer, accusing it of trying to manipulate the negotiations. So I don't know if there's going to be renewed warfare. Now, there still have been some strikes in Gaza going on. So, for example, this is from today. Israel strikes kill 5 people in Gaza, local medics say. Reportedly, an Israeli airstrike killed 3 Palestinian men in Gaza on Monday as they tried to gather firewood, medics said, with no sign of progress today in renewed talks on sustaining a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. In the latest bloodshed to undermine the fragility of Gaza, the Gaza war's 3-stage truce, the 3, all from the same family, had left their homes in central Gaza to collect the wood for cooking. That has become a daily task for many Gazans, as Israel has continued to ban fuel, food, and medical goods from entering Gaza for over 2 weeks, residents said. The Israeli military said in a statement it struck terrorists operating near their forces and attempting to plant a bomb. Israel's suspension of goods entering Gaza for 16 days now has increased pressure on Gaza's 2.3 million people, most of whom have been made homeless by the war. The suspension, which Israel said was aimed at pressuring Hamas in ceasefire talks, applies to food, medicine, and fuel imports. And here's a little background here. Israel wants to extend the first phase of the ceasefire, mediated by Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S., a proposal backed by U.S. envoy Steve Lookner. Hamas says it will resume freeing hostages only under the second phase of the ceasefire. That was due to begin on March 2nd. On Friday, Hamas said it had agreed to release an American-Israeli soldier, Eden Alexander, and 4 bodies of the hostages if Israel agreed to begin talks immediately on implementing the second phase of the agreement. Israel accused Hamas of waging psychological warfare on hostage families. We do not know what's going to happen. But that would certainly not be a great sign for the ceasefire, and would not be promising if we start seeing some sort of large-scale Israeli military operation again. By the way, thank you so much to Captain Jerry Donnelly, who said, my ship was attacked by Somali pirates backed by Iran. Houthis will keep attacking as long as Iran keeps giving them weapons. Thank you for your service, Captain Jerry Donnelly. Thank you. Also, PZ Papa Zulu. Thanks for the gift memberships. Also for your service, PZ Papa Zulu. Oregon guy thinks Trump is designing a way to make Iran stop their exporting of terrorism worldwide. All right. Well, guys, here's what I think we're going to do. We have covered, hold on a moment here. We have covered 3 press briefings today. We did the White House press briefing, the State Department press briefing, the Pentagon press briefing, all happened one after the other. The Pentagon was the first Pentagon press briefing of this administration, this term. So I think we're getting to be our time. I think we've done what we came here to do on this stream. If there's big news later today, I can come back on the air and cover it. Oh, by the way, thanks TK for your support. And Keith Lewis. TK, thank you. I don't think I thanked TK. And also Tyler Becker. It's very nice of you. I appreciate that. So yeah, so if there's big news later, we can cover it. Tomorrow, we're going to be covering the splashdown of the returning astronauts from the space station, including the 2 astronauts who've been up there for about 9 months. That splashdown is supposed to happen around 6 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll come on at some time before that to cover that. We'll cover that tomorrow. And if there's big other news, we'll cover that as well. So I really appreciate you guys coming by and being here for our coverage. Thanks. A lot of you have sent comments in and let me read your comments and questions and posted stuff in the chat and sent me news updates. So I appreciate all of that. And subscribe and follow the channel Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda here. Agenda Free TV. And turn the notifications on. I never know when big news is going to happen. We're going to have to jump on the air. So we have a notification system that works great on Discord. It's free. You sign up just once and you get a notification when we go live every time. So you don't miss a broadcast. The mods will post a link to the notifications in the chat. You can find the notifications link on our description of this video on Facebook and YouTube too. So make sure you sign up for the notifications. And I will post updates on my X account, news updates, which I do frequently when I'm off the air, at Lookner on X. You can follow me over there for breaking news updates. And also, thanks so much to our moderators. We've had a bunch of people in the chat rooms as we normally do, and we can only have which is great, but we can only have those chat rooms because we have our moderators. So huge thanks to our moderators for being here during our coverage. Ruth Krafasi over there on YouTube, Beth Mythical, so nice of you. Cynthia Moon, Sabrina, all of our other moderators over there on YouTube, thank you. Linda Belk, Larry, Misha on X. On Facebook, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, Paul Anderson, Charlotte Webb, thank you. Also on Twitch, Big Ball of Yarn, Good Luck Duck, Idaho Star, Matthew Kohai 3, McBritches, Surly Dev, all of our other Twitch moderators. Thanks to all of our moderators. And thanks so much everybody who donated too. That's super nice of you guys. You are the ones who allow this channel to exist with your support. So, oh, by the way, before what is this here? I have a couple quotes that I just saw from the White House pool from President Trump's meeting at the board meeting at the Kennedy Center. He said, What is this? President said top people under President Xi, and he'll be coming in the not. I can't really read this quote. The quote looks like it's a little messed up. There might be something missing. I don't really have any quotes, any big quotes I want to read you from that. I saw a few, but the one I was going to read you, it's a little incomplete, so I'm not going to read that right now. Anyways, if you ever want to donate to the channel, you can go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv. But huge thanks to everybody who donated, and thanks for all your support, which allows this channel to exist. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Also, hey, we have a chat where you can chat with other viewers when we're not live. It's on Discord. It's free. A bunch of our viewers like doing it. Check it out. It's the same link as the notifications link. So check out the chat, and thanks to our Discord mods as well for all you do. Also, another great way to find out when we're going live for those of you who are on X. Follow us on X at Agenda Free TV. I give you a heads up there before we're going live every single time. And also we'll post updates about the channel. Agenda Free TV on X. Follow over there. And if you watch on YouTube, I would suggest turning on the YouTube notifications. But that can be a little tricky. So I'll just mention how to do that. If you want to turn on the YouTube notifications, here's how you do it. You need to subscribe, but after you subscribe, you click this. You click the notifications bell, and then you choose all notifications. That way, you'll get the YouTube notifications. Also, hey, I want to shout out our Facebook subscribers. I really appreciate you subscribing over there and supporting the channel. Margaret Riley, Kay Lowry Body, Lou Green, Michael Clayton, Robert Rial II, Sharon Klassen Goslin, Eve Richards, Rita Evans Lang, all of our other Facebook subscribers. Thanks so much for supporting the channel. And our Twitch subscribers too, like Shaggy in Wall Street and Night Owl, Matthew Kohai 3, Sandy Doggo, Bogan 4, Flumpingtons, The Sugar Rose, Sketty Sandwich. Thank you, Twitch subscribers. Big Ball of Yarn, P14Y3, Ron 3, Ruben Amorim. Thanks for subscribing over there. And Billy Joe, Allistic, Distant Galaxy 13. Thank you, Twitch subscribers. And our YouTube members, too, like Jesse's Girl, Naomi Nocturnal, CAC813, Justin King, Music Muse, June Evelyn in Maine, Dean R., J.K. Sinar, Captain Jerry Donnelly, Per Holstrand, Chris Weinrock, and Danny G, and Marnie, and Getcha Pull, and Riri Patton, and J.K. Sinar, and Smedley. Thanks for subscribing, Sarah Milligan. All of our for being members. All of our YouTube members: Fedora, Firestar, the TK, Roger Shoemaker, Babs, and all of our other viewers too. Kitty Tiger, I'll say Tuck F, thanks for watching. Baby Duck 5. All right, we're wrapping this up, guys. Tony Neem. Hey, Kristen McConnell Gates, thanks for subscribing on Facebook. Thanks, Kevin Groves, for watching. Paula Thompson. All right, so, Zuna Signal, thank you. So thank you for joining our coverage. 3 briefings. Again, I don't think we've ever done this yet. I don't think we've ever we've had a stream where we got to cover all three of these briefings completely in succession. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but the timing worked out. So, we're going to wrap this up. Again, if there's big news tonight, I'll come back on the air and cover it, and we will be on the air tomorrow to cover the splashdown of the returning astronauts who've been on the space station for about 9 months. That splashdown is roughly 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's the schedule. When will we come on the air? My guess around like 4:30 or something like that. Don't hold me to it. All right. So that is it now for now. Thank you so much for being here for our coverage, and we'll see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.